What is up, my peeps?
Check out Life of a Space Force Captain by Mike Walter. Radio button unchecked 207.
I'm playing Life of a Wizard by Mike Walter, and this was requested, so this should be fun.
Life by check out The Last Wizard by The Last Wizard.
Oh right, I also have to play that too.
Check out The Lost Air Trilogy by Mike Walter. Check out Life of a Mobster by Mike Walter. Check out Paradox Factor by Mike Walter. Radio button unchecked 607. Follow and support Mike Walter and Lucid Games. Next, Wizards. From the kindly old white bearded casters wearing robes with stars and moons to the battle-hardened Worm AGE throwing fireballs at dragons. The royal family has always had one on hand, a wise diviner to lead the kingdom into peace, or a dangerous conjurer to dominate all of the land under one rule. Or perhaps a divine healer? An alchemist? Or even a necromancer? The combinations are boundless. Let me tell you my story. I wasn't always a wizened old wizard, you know. Wizards begin their lives the same as everyone else. I was born in a small village. King Norbert
Hello?
reigned in the capital city of Tornassa,
Hi.
20 miles away from my small village.
Okay. Alright. No. But I mean, can't I get it from their website? So it's what, Prudential Financial.gov? Or is it? Okay. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yep. Love you too. Bye.
I remember the day I was born. My parents were good people. Radio button checked 1 of 2. My parents didn't want me. Radio button unchecked.
Complimentary line. Post a comment out of it. List with one eye. Toggle button. Press. Show it on screen. StreamYard lib. Out of list. Tab. Private chat. Tab. Brand. Tab. Tab. Clickable. Clickable. Mate button. Studio. Clickable button. Mute. Clickable. JC. Compliment. Post out of list with one items button. Star comment.
Next button. Next button. My parents didn't want me. Radio button unchecked 2 of 2.
Jesus fucking Christ. Okay, I don't have the time to deal with you right now.
parents didn't want me. Radio button. Unchecked. 2 of 2. Check. Next. But it was a terrible start for a baby. Boy. Radio button. Checked. 1 of 2. Girl. Radio button. Unchecked. 2 of 2. Checked. Next. But they named me. Morgana. Radio button. Brunella. Radio. Griselda. Radio. Gladys. Rick. Alana. Rick. Something else. Next. But I grew up in the village of Elmvale, where nearly everyone was human, although there were a few exceptions. The entire kingdom of Daria was like that, besides the dwarves under the Grey Mountains, the elves in the Alderheart Forest, and the orcs in the wilderness to the west. Our kingdom was very racially tolerant when I was young. My parents and I were human. Radio button. Checked. 1 of 10. My parents and I were elves. Radio button. Unchecked. 2 of 10. My parents and I were dwarves. Radio button. Unchecked. 3 of 10. My parents and I were halflings. Radio button. My parents and I were gnomes. My parents and I were half ORCS. My parents and I were half elves. Radio. My parents and I were pure blood orcs. Radio button. My parents and I were goblins. Radio button. Unchecked. 9 of 10. My parents and I were trolls. Radio button. Unchecked. 10 of 10. Checked. Next. It was very difficult being a troll and growing up in a human village. My parents were just civilized enough to live in a human village, which was unheard of for our kind, but they were still aggressive and prone to anger. The other races considered us very frightening, but our green skin, long arms, and enormous height seemed normal to me. We were the only trolls I ever saw growing up. There were no other trolls living in any human cities that I knew of. Fighting plus 30, body plus 20, willpower minus 10, personality minus 20, healing plus 15. My parents weren't poor, although they never bothered to ensure that my clothes were without holes or that my shoes fit. They fought a lot, and my father was often drunk. They never hit me, but I think that was because they knew that the temple priests would never allow such a thing. I always had the impression that they were waiting for me to become old enough to move out. Even as a young child, I was drawn into the unknown. I remember my first magical experience, even though I was only 5 years old. I didn't know where my parents were, but I wandered off alone. Into the forest. Radio button. Checked. 1 of 4. Into a graveyard. Radio button. Unchecked. 2 of 4. Into the temple. Radio button. Unchecked. 3 of 4. Into the village witch's hut. Radio button. Unchecked. 4 of 4.
Heather 5:37 p.m. Hello, I'm here.
Hey Heather, how's it going?
Toggle button not pressed. Clickable button. Button star comment. Heather 5:39 p.m. Is there a problem?
No, shouldn't be a problem.
Toggle button. Clickable button star comment. Heather 5:41 p.m. I see how these stories work. Neat.
Yep, that's the beauty of it.
Toggle clickable button star comment. Out of list post a comment.
So how you doing, Heather?
Into the temple. Radio button. Unchecked. 3 of 4.
Let's see. I'm going to go
Into a graveyard. Radio button.
Graveyard.
Unchecked. Checked. Next, I remember how the moon had cast odd shadows upon the gravestones that night. I had been wandering between the tombstones for some time before a glowing shape appeared before me. It was a ghost, a spirit trapped on our side of the veil. I ran home and told the local priest what I had seen. Radio button. Checked. 1 of 4. I tried to force it to do what I wanted. Radio button. Unchecked. 2 of 4. Checked. I felt sad for it, so I tried to cheer the ghost up. Radio button. Unchecked. 3 of 4. I tried to break the gravestone that it was in front of. Radio button. Next button. I can't explain what made me try to do that. It just seemed natural that such unnatural creatures should do my bidding. I had no luck that day, and the ghosts faded away. Evil plus 2 and necromancy plus 10. At the age of 7, I made a friend. Childhood friends are special since they remain a part of you for the rest of your life, even after you've grown apart. I was surprised that anyone would want to be friends with me, considering that I was a troll. My best friend was a boy. Radio button. Checked. 1 of 3. A girl. Radio. Imaginary. Next button. His name was Rob. Radio button. Nick. Patrick. Radio button. Anton. Something else. Next. Patrick was
Out of edit. Clickable button. Comment. Toggle button. Heather 5:42 p.m. It's going well. Just finished dinner.
Oh, good. Hope it was great.
A human, radio button, checked, 1 of 7. An elf, radio button, unchecked, 2 of 7. A dwarf, radio button, unchecked, 3 of 7. A halfling, radio button, unchecked, 4 of 7. A gnome, radio button, unchecked, 5 of 7. A half-orc, radio button, unchecked, 6 of 7. A half-elf, radio button, unchecked, 7 of 7. Next button. We got along really well, even though I was a troll and Patrick was a human. We spent a lot of time together. Prince Gareth, the heir to the royal throne, was 17 at the time. His younger sister, Princess Emily, was 2 years younger. I sometimes pretended that I was Princess Emily. Patrick and I often played at being royalty, among other games. We were nearly inseparable. We used to play imaginary games in the forest. Radio button, checked, 1 of 4. Patrick was a bad influence on me. Radio button, Patrick was a good influence on me. We used to play fight and have imaginary battles. Radio button, next, we used to get into all kinds of trouble together. We often stole things from the market, like little toys and bits of candy. Thievery plus 10, evil plus 1, gold plus 25, and willpower minus 5.
Oops.
Toggle button. Clickable button. Comment button. Start comment. Out of list. Post a comment. Edit.
There was a bully in my village who was a few years older than me. Yes, even I had this kind of trouble when I was a child. He terrorized my childhood. Radio button. She terrorized. Next button. His name was Marcus. Darren. Ted. Nolan. Something else. Next. Marcus was a human. Radio button, checked, 1 of 7. An elf, radio button, unchecked, 2 of 7. Checked. A dwarf, a halfling, radio, a gnome, a half elf. Next, but I know that I shouldn't have stereotyped all elves because of how Marcus behaved, but I couldn't help myself. Elf action minus 10. I remember the first day Marcus started picking on me. I kicked his shins and ran away. Radio. I tried to scare them away, which should have been easy since I was a troll. Radio button, unchecked, 2 of 5. I tried reasoning with the bully. Radio button, unchecked. I didn't want to be bullied my entire life, so I started exercising. Radio button. I tried to join Marcus. I thought that we'd be able to bully other kids together. Radio button. I didn't want to be bullied Next, I was beaten up that day, but I didn't want it to happen again. Body plus 5, fighting plus 5.
Out of edit. Post. Out of edit. Clickable button. Toggle button. Heather 5:42 p.m. It's going well.
Sorry, I'm reading the comments on StreamYard, so.
I was 7 years old when I started noticing the difference between boys and girls. I was attracted to girls. Radio button, checked, 1 of 3. I was attracted to boys. Radio button, unchecked, 2 of 3. I was attracted to both boys and girls. Radio button,
Yeah, why not?
unchecked,
What the hell?
3. Checked. Next. That shows that was the year I met a very special girl. Radio button, checked, 1 of 3. That was the year I met a very special boy. It was a very lonely year for me. Radio button, unchecked, 3 of 3. Next, but her name was Sherry. Radio button, checked, 1 of 5. Melba, Gwen, Elizabeth, something else. Next, Sherry was a human. Radio, an elf. Radio button, checked. A dwarf, a halfling, a gnome, a half. Next, but I could hardly believe that I had found love. Sherry was very special to want to spend time with a troll. I knew that people sometimes looked at us strangely behind our backs. It wasn't every day that a troll dated an elf. I found her exotic elven beauty extremely attractive. Elf action plus 10. We did everything together.
Toggle button. Clickable button. Button. Start comment. Heather 5:47 p.m. That's okay. Glad to see you've got comments working.
I experienced new emotions that I couldn't describe. I did everything I could just to be in her presence, like helping her parents at their smithy, radio button, general store, farm, inn, temple, lumberyard, next, lumberyard. Next, I even learned about types of trees and the lumber they provide. Nature plus 7. Sherry was my first love. I still remember how soft her lips were when I kissed them for the first time. I'll never forget those wonderful days. Personality plus 3. Life in Elmvale was pleasant, and it was a beautiful place to grow up. There was a sparkling river that ran through the center of it, and farms all around us. We had all of the amenities of a small town, as well. I spent most of my time with Patrick, my best friend. My nights were filled dreaming about Sherry. I enjoyed swimming in the town's river on hot summer days. Radio button, check. I often took moonlit walks with Sherry. Radio button, unchecked, 2 of 6. I did small jobs for the local business owners. Radio button, unchecked. I rarely left my home, preferring to stay at home and read. I got into a lot of trouble. I helped out at the local temple. Next, I often took Next, we would walk through the farmers' fields where the sky was wide open above us. I knew some of the constellations but had just as much fun making up names and stories for those we didn't know. I stole many kisses during those late night walks. Personality plus 3. I remember one day when we found a little puppy in a back alley. It looked so sad and lonely, which made me think it didn't belong to anyone. It was very dirty and had a broken leg. I nursed it back to health. Radio button, checked, 1 of 5. I threw rocks at it until it died. Radio button, unchecked, 2 of 5.
Jesus.
I caught it and sold it to some orcs. Radio button, unchecked. I ate it. Radio button, unchecked, 4 of 5. I ignored it. Radio button, next, button. I fed it and kept it clean until its leg healed. It was a strong little dog. Good plus 1 and healing plus 15.
Toggle button, clickable button, button start, out of list, post a comment, edit.
I was 12 years old when tragedy struck. Rumors of trouble had been building for weeks, but as a kid, I never paid it any attention. One day, I saw the streets full of smoke. At first, I thought it was the great dragon Parnixus, breathing fire upon my small village. That wasn't the case. Soon I learned that raiders were setting fire to houses and stores. Our small village was being attacked by elves, dwarves, radio button. Next, button. I wondered where King Norbert was and why his soldiers weren't there to protect us. I later learned that most of Daria had been attacked that year. The king really had his hands full. I did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed a sword to protect my friends and family. Radio. I went to the temple and tended to the wounded. Radio button. I looted the corpses. Radio. I hid in the basement of my house. Next, button. There were so many dead villagers, it made me wonder if our village was going to survive. I helped bandage wounds and sew cuts that had been made by cruel orc swords. Healing plus 10, kingdom faction plus 10, religion plus 5 and good plus 1. The orc raiders were ruthless. Many people were killed, and several buildings burned down. My parents were killed. Radio button, checked, 1 of 4. My first love, Sherry, Patrick was killed. I was very badly injured. Next, but I had mixed feelings. My parents had been cruel and mean, but they were still my parents, and now they were dead. The attack changed everything, putting an end to my carefree days as a child. I likely would have had a few more years of fun and innocence, but after the attack I had to get a job and become an adult. I moved into the temple orphanage. Radio button, checked, 1 of 2. I got my own place and found a job. Radio button, unchecked, 2 of 2.
Out of edit, clickable button, toggle button, header 5:47 p.m. That's okay.
I got my own. Next, life was hard as a young adult, but I earned a living. I apprenticed at the local blacksmith. Radio button. I joined the town guard. Radio. I became a nature guide. Radio. I became an apprentice to a scribe. Actually, I did something else. Radio. Next, button. The blacksmith was a good man. He took me under his wing and taught me how to make all sorts of useful things. Had my life gone differently, I probably would have become the blacksmith for my village when he retired. Body plus 5, Smithing plus 30, Economics plus 5, and Gold plus 60. Sherry was a great comfort to me after I lost my parents. I used to pick wildflowers for her hair. Radio button. I bought many presents for her enjoyment. Needs 20 gold. Radio button. I was cruel to Sherry. We used to take long walks in the woods. Radio button. We used to fight and make up all the time. Next button. I loved to see her face light up each time I got her a new gift. Personality plus 3 and gold minus 20. When I was 14, Marcus the bully and some of his friends cornered me in an alley. I had thought that now that I was a blacksmith, these types of things wouldn't happen. Marcus didn't see it that way. I stood up for myself and fought him off. Needs 30 fighting and 30 body. Radio button. Checked. 1 of 4. I talked them out of it. Needs 35 personality. Dimmed. Remember that dog I helped? He came back and helped me fight them off. Radio button. Unchecked. 3 of 4. I got beaten up badly that day, but I vowed to get my revenge in the future. Radio button. Next button. I remember that dog. Check. Next. They had me cornered, when suddenly the dog dove over my shoulder and landed right on Marcus, digging his teeth into his arm while Marcus screamed in pain and surprise. The dog let go after a few minutes, and Marcus and the other bullies ran away. I knew at that moment that I could form a special bond with this wonderful animal. Did I find my familiar that day? Yes, I did. Radio button. No, I didn't keep next button, so I named it Max. Radio Shadow. Radio button. Killer. Fido. Something else. Next. Shadow never left my side. You're probably wondering when my magical training began. I became a mighty wizard, after all, yet so far my story has been about my childhood. I was 15 years old when I left my job as a blacksmith.
Toggle button, clickable, button star comment, out of list post a comment edit.
I stole a magic ring from a sorcerer who visited my village. Needs 10 thievery. Radio button. Checked. 1 of 3. I was going through my parents' belongings. Radio button. I had seen enough magic in my life to know that I wanted to be a wizard. Radio button. Unchecked. Next button. I was going to check. I had next button. They had been dead for 3 years when I found the old chest. There was a mysterious amulet in it. Next to the amulet, there was a letter from my parents. It said that my parents had been necromancers and the amulet was a family heirloom from my grandfather. They had been learning magic in order to unlock its power, so I decided that I would go to the academy myself to master the arcane arts. Gain mysterious amulet. I was nervous about going to the academy. I didn't think that a troll would be allowed entry, but I decided that I would try anyway and see what happened. Sherry was sad to hear that I was leaving. I promised to remain true. Radio button. Check. I suggested that we break up. Next button. Sherry promised to wait for me. We made love before I left. Radio button. Checked. 1 of 2. We had a final kiss before I left. Next. It was a night I'll never forget. It was magical in a way that I was sure I'd never see at the academy. Personality plus 3. I knew I needed a horse to get to the academy. It was in the royal city of Tornassa, many miles away.
Out of edit, clickable but toggle button, header 547p.
I purchased the horse for 75 gold. Needs 75 gold. Dimmed. I stole a horse. Needs 25 thievery. Dimmed. I chose to borrow the money. Radio button. Next button. I knew of a few lenders who would take my business. They charged me 90 gold for a 75 gold piece horse. It was robbery, of the legal kind. Gold minus 90. I mounted up and left my village. I didn't know it at the time, but my magic would end up greatly extending my horse's lifespan. I promised myself that I would not eat my new horse. I decided to name it Blaze. Radio button. Spirit. Prank something. Next. Needless to say, Shadow, my dog, came with me. I had a nice little party before I left. We exited in the newly rebuilt tavern since the old one had been burned down during the orc raid. I think Sherry put it together. We drank a lot, and Patrick got really drunk. I gave up the life of a blacksmith and left for the academy the next day. Next chapter, button. The trip to Tornassel went well. I spent the first day as a tourist, just seeing the sights. King Norbert and Queen Audrey's castle was impressive. I stared up at the towers, hoping to catch a glimpse of Prince Gareth, who is now 25, or Princess Emily, who was 2 years younger. I didn't see any royalty that day. I thought I was going to have trouble with the city guard at first, but besides them keeping a close eye on me, there was no difficulty.
Toggle but click button start out of list post.
The next morning, I went to the academy. This was where all of the great maids have learned their skills, including the royal advisor, Frelden. The academy was financed by the Maid Guild, which was nice since it meant I didn't have to pay anything. I stood at the entrance to the academy, uncertain as to how to proceed. "Why have you come?" The voice came from a little old man sitting on a rock next to the doors leading into the academy. He was very small, and his bald head made him seem vulnerable. "Who are you?" I asked. "I am Master Durgan, the doorkeeper to the academy." "Why have you come?" I told him that I wanted to learn magic, I told him that I wanted to learn necromancy, I told him that I wanted to learn everything, I told him it was none of his business and to let me in, Next button. Master Durgan nodded. "That is an honest answer and the best reason to have come. There are other schools to learn regular subjects, but only the academy teaches magic. Please, come inside." He smiled knowingly and led me to the testing chamber. Arcana +5, Alchemy +5, Conjuration +5, Divination +5, Enchantment +5, Illusion +5, Summoning +5, Transmutation +5. Master Durgan placed his hands on my head and concentrated. After a few moments, he nodded his bald head in approval. "Yes, the spark is within you. Welcome to the academy." "Doesn't it bother you that I'm a troll?" I asked Master Durgan. "You seem different to me," he said honestly. "More importantly, you have the spark. It would be very nice to have a troll graduate from the academy for the first time." I was given a room in the academy, which included a bed, a desk, and a chair. It was very sparse, but it was my own. I was also given a schedule of classes. My training as a wizard had begun. Although I learned many things at the academy, my favorite class was Alchemy, Conjuration, Divination, Enchantment, Illusion, Summoning, Transmutation, something else, radio button, something else, radio button, unchecked, 8 of 8. Next, I learned that necromancy wasn't studied, as it was considered an evil magic. Healing also wasn't taught in a specific class, having been considered mostly a domain of priests. Healing was my true gift, even though it wasn't officially taught at the academy. Radio button. Necromancy was where the true power lay. Radio button. Actually, my favorite class was one of those others. Next, got to raise people from the dead, in order to serve me. Necromancers can reanimate a body in order to create skeletons, zombies, ghouls, mummies, liches, and other powerful undead creatures. Yes, I found a way to become a necromancer. Radio button. No. Next, I would learn the forbidden art, even if I had to study it on my own. I longed to become a great necromancer, calling forth the dead to do my bidding. My classes went well as I began to learn the arcane arts. I was amazed at how tolerant everyone was to me, considering my unique features as a troll. It was a lot of work, reading ancient tomes and trying to force mystical energies to do as I wished. I learned a little bit of everything that was taught during my time at the academy. Arcana +10, Alchemy +10, Conjuration +10, Divination +10, Enchantment +10, Illusion +10, Summoning +10, Transmutation +10. I made a friend. He was also a student. Radio button, checked, 1 of 3. I made a friend. I concentrated solely on my studies, leaving no time for socializing. Radio button, unchecked, 3 of 3. Next, his name was Ethan, James, Ryan, Dominic, Ryan. Something. Next, Ryan was a human, an elf, a dwarf, an elf, a dwarf, a half, a gnome, a half. Next, racial diversity was even more prominent in the capital city of Tornassa. especially at the academy. Even so, it still seemed unbelievable to me that a troll could become friends with an elf. It was wonderful. I learned elf action plus 10. We met in transmutation class. We got to talking, and it turned out that his big passion was gardening, radio button, board games, sword fighting, radio button, history, making toy soldiers, next button. Ryan knew a lot of styles and moves. Some of the other students found it funny that Ryan continued this hobby at the academy, even though it seemed very unwizardly. I found it comforting. I knew my way around a blade and enjoyed sparring. The practice made us both get better. Fighting plus 15, body plus 3. It was late one night in my first year when I was scared out of my wits. I had been sound asleep in my bed when I heard someone say, "Your life shall begin anew." I sat upright and was terrified to see a group of people standing around the bed in my tiny room. They were wearing black robes, masks, and silver necklaces shaped like skulls. One of them held a black robe and mask out to me. I knew right away that I was being invited to join the secret society of necromancers that operated out of the academy. I put on the robe and mask. This was the moment I had been waiting for. Radio button. I told them to leave. Next button. I followed them down the hall and across the academy campus to a building that was rarely used. There were nearly 50 masked people assembled, although the 3 that had brought me into the society were the only ones wearing the silver skull pendants. I later learned that these were the leaders of the necromancers. They had set up an altar with candles burning all around it. The body of a dead deer were placed upon it for all to see. I watched in amazement as they raised the animal from the dead. It looked hideously deformed, but it was still able to walk around among us afterward. Our identities were kept secret from each other throughout the night. We gathered once a week from that night forward. During my time at the academy, I never learned the identities of any of my fellow secret society members, and only the silver skull wearing necromancers knew mine. Necromancy plus 15. My summoning class was always interesting. We learned to create protective circles and to bring forth all kinds of animals, demons, and elementals from various planes. It was important to maintain control of the creatures that were summoned. I had a really difficult summoning assignment during my first year. I cheated by going into the woods and catching a rabbit. Needs 10 nature, dimmed. I cheated by using Shadow, my dog, radio button, checked, 2 of 4. I studied really hard, at the expense of my other classes, radio button,
Out of edit clickable. Post out of it clickable but toggle button. Heather 5:59 p.m. Why didn't you simply buy the horse if you had the gold?
Because I didn't have the gold. I only had 65 gold.
Button star comment. Clickable toggle button. Heather 5:47 p. Toggle clickable button. Heather 5:50. Toggle clickable button star com. Out of list post a comment.
I didn't even bother to try. I cheated, but next. My summon. Next. I said a bunch of mumbo jumbo. Then Shadow jumped out from under my desk. My teacher was quite impressed with the way I could make the dog do whatever I told it. I passed with a really good grade. I actually learned a bit of summoning too, as I had to know exactly how a summoned creature would act. Summoning plus 10. Ryan and I spent a lot of time together. It was nice to have a friend at the academy. We liked to pull pranks on the teachers. Radio. We spent all our time studying. We liked to bully the other students. We started a business to earn some extra money. We volunteered in the school infirmary. We studied weaponry together. Radio button. Next button. We liked to. We spent all our. Next. It was good to have a study partner because the material we were learning was very difficult. Arcana plus 1, Alchemy plus 1, Conjuration plus 1, Divination plus 1, Enchantment plus 1, Illusion plus 1, Summoning plus 1, Transmutation plus 1, Body minus 3. One of the new subjects that we had to study at the academy was Arcana. This included everything from the theory of magic to magical artifacts. We learned about the nature of reality and how our mystical energies were able to change the very fabric of existence. It was tremendously exciting, and I was an apt pupil. Radio button. Check. A fifth-year student sold me a potion that helped. I had trouble sitting still through the long. Next button. My teachers were happy to see how enthusiastic I was about learning everything. I spent many hours studying Arcana and reading extra books on the subject. Arcana plus 20.
Cortana.
20 minus
Cortana
5.
wind. StreamYard.
It was during my second year
Out of
at
edit.
the
Clickable.
academy
Post.
that
Out of
I
edit.
had my
List with 9 items. Button. Start comment. Clickable button. Toggle button. Not. Heather 608 p.m. Why do you rush through some choices?
Our task was to use
Sorry.
our magic to divine what the question was.
Just, I'm not used to listening to it at a slower rate, so sorry if I'm rushing through some choices.
I begged my teacher for a hint, and she eventually helped me. Needs 35 personality, dimmed. I studied really hard, at the expense of my other classes. Radio button, checked, 2 of 3. I didn't even bother to try. Radio button, unchecked, 3 of 3. Next, but I divined that the question was, what is the teacher's favorite number? It was 7. I wrote that down and passed the test. Willpower plus 3, alchemy minus 2, conjuration minus 2, divination plus 12, enchantment minus 2, illusion minus 2, summoning minus 2, transmutation minus 2. The academy was filled with young men and women who were filled with hopes and dreams. Despite the fact that we were studying knowledge that seemed better suited to older people, we still acted like kids sometimes.
Toggle. Clickable button. Button. Start. Out of list. Button. Hide. Post a comment. Edit. Out of list. Click toggle button. Heather 608. Button. Start. Click toggle. Heather 606 moves. Buttons. Click toggle button. Heather 559. Top click but head top click but Heather 60 toggle click button. Start comment. Out of list but.
I met an attractive girl in my second year. Radio button, checked, 1 of 3. I met a handsome boy in my second year. Radio button. I didn't have top next, but her name was Amanda. Radio button, checked, 1 of 5. Jill, Julie, radio button. Rosie, radio, something else. Next, Amanda was a human, an elf, radio, a dwarf, a halfling, a gnome, radio, a half RC, a half elf. Next, but I wasn't surprised that I hadn't found a troll like myself to fall in love with. We were considered monsters, after all. I was glad that Amanda didn't see me that way. I found myself thinking about her eyes while meditating in divination class, or wondering what it would be like to kiss her lips when I should have been practicing my conjuring. Personality plus 3. But I love Cherry, so I never saw Amanda again. Radio button, checked, 1 of 4. I broke up with Cherry so I could date Amanda. Radio button. I cheated on Cherry, having many passionate nights with Amanda. Radio button. But it never really amounted to anything. Radio button. Next, after a few weeks, I stopped thinking about Amanda. Personality minus 2. My alchemy class involved a lot of memorization. I had to know what each ingredient did, how they reacted to each other, and what type of incantation would make each potion stable. There was a very difficult project that year. I borrowed a potion from Ryan, handing it in as my own. Radio button, check. I studied really hard, at the expense of my other classes. Radio button, unchecked, 2 of 3. Check. I didn't even bother to try.
List with
Radio
click
button,
talk Heather
unchecked,
buttons. Heather
2 of
6:10
3.
p.m. That makes sense. No big deal. You don't rush through the really important ones.
No, I'll try not to rush anymore, okay?
Next button. I studied really hard. Check. Next. Eventually, I made the proper potion. Willpower plus 3, alchemy plus 12, conjuration minus 2, divination minus 2, enchantment minus 2, illusion minus 2, summoning minus 2, transmutation minus 2. There was a terrible accident in my transmutations class at the beginning of my 3rd year. We were taking turns working on a standard spell when a young red-haired boy's magic went wild. The walls turned translucent and then shiny as the brick turned to glass. A loud crack silenced everyone in the room, but there was no time to think before the roof came crashing down upon us. Many students were badly injured from flying glass and falling stone. I was able to help out a lot. Needs 20 healing. Radio button, checked, 1 of 4. I was able to help out a little bit. Needs 10 healing. Radio, I tried to help. Needs 1 healing. Radio, I chose not to help anyone. Radio button. Next, I knew a lot about healing. I bandaged cuts and held arteries closed until the academy healers arrived. It was a good thing I was there since I'm pretty sure I saved some lives. Fame plus 1, make guild plus 25, healing plus 10. I remember the day I heard a knock upon my door. Patrick came to visit radio. My girlfriend, Sherry, came to visit radio button. Checked. It turned out to be a mistake. Next button. I show Sherry the sights. We were fortunate to have a flock of griffins pass overhead during her visit. It was very beautiful. Nature plus 10. My conjuration class was very practical. We learned to throw fire and create magical shields for combat casting and dueling. I still won my share of duels since I knew how to fight. Needs 25 fighting. Radio button. Check. I still won my share of duels since I was very strong. Needs 35 body. Radio button. Unchecked. 2 of 5. Checked. My troll heritage made me hard to beat. Radio button. Unchecked. I studied really hard. I didn't even bother. Next, but we only use low-level magic in our duels, so every time I was hit by something, I healed from it. This gave me the extra time needed to cast my own offensive spell to win the fight. Healing plus 10. I was beginning to learn that the academy was a very dangerous place. I had made it to my 4th year, but I was becoming less concerned with the graduation rate and more at ease with the survival rate. Another accident took place in my summoning class. Some student had gained access to the Archmage's personal library and learned a spell they couldn't control. I filed that thought away for later. The idea that extra powerful tomes were kept apart was very interesting. This spell began normally as the student made the necessary gestures and said the needed magic words. Unfortunately, he missed a key component to the spell, and the snakes he summoned were out of his control. To make matters worse, they were poisonous and extremely aggressive. They immediately began to attack everyone in sight. I commanded the snakes to follow my orders. Needs 30 willpower. Dimmed. I grabbed a chair and fought the snakes. Needs 30 fighting. Radio button. I fried them all with conjured lightning. Needs 25 conjuration. Dimmed. Several of the snakes bit me. Radio button. Unchecked. 4 of 4. Next, but I grabbed the closest thing I could find, a chair, and began to fight the snakes. They fell, one at a time, and nobody was seriously injured. After a few minutes, their corpses disappeared, returned to where they had come from. Fame plus 1, make guild plus 15, fighting plus 15.
Toggle button. Clickable button. Starcom. Heather 6:13 p.m. Where are you going with this character? Toggle button. Clickable button. Button. Starcom. Out of list button. Hide current comp.
This character is going to become a necromancer. If you want, I can play through all the eventual endings, all the different classes, all the different categories, and the different 10 races. There are 10 different races that you can choose from.
Everyone congratulated me on my heroism. I don't know how poisonous their venom was. I was just glad that I wasn't bitten. My enchantment exam was very interesting. The academy hired a man from a nearby town for us to work our magic on. He stood at the front of the class, and we were told to use our enchanting spells to make him do what we wanted. I bribed him 100 gold to do what I told him to do. Needs 100 gold. Dimmed. I studied really hard, at the expense of my other classes. Radio. I didn't even bother to try. Next button. I learned enough to get by. I was able to use a decent fear spell on the man that caused him to run out of the room. He was likely already terrified at having students cast their uncontrolled spells at him. Willpower plus 3, alchemy minus 2, conjuration minus 2, divination minus 2, enchantment plus 12, illusion minus 2, summoning minus 2, transmutation minus 2. I remember that fateful day in my 4th year when all classes were cancelled. Good King Norbert had died, and Prince Gareth, who was 28 years old at the time, was to be our new king. All of the wizards of the academy gathered for the coronation ceremony. The royal wizard, Fralden, smiled at the students from his place of honor near the prince and princess. He held his gnarled wooden staff in his hands and smiled through his thick white beard. King Norbert's widow, Queen Audrey, looked very sad. She had obviously loved her husband very much. Princess Emily looked very sad as well. Her lightly curled brown hair lay across her shoulders, and her deep brown eyes had a shine to them that showed she had been crying. Prince Gareth seemed eager to assume the crown, his dark gaze never leaving the official who was conducting the coronation. After the ceremony, the festivities began. I saw Archmage Luscious sitting with Frailton for most of the celebration. CL, Lacy's familiar, was nowhere to be seen. The raven was likely flying high in the sky and out of sight. My accomplishments had become known to a few nobles. Needs one fame, radio button, check. I watched Princess Emily. She was very beautiful. Radio button. I watched our newly appointed ruler, King Gareth. He was very handsome. Radio button, unchecked, 3 of 4. I sat with my fellow students and enjoyed the festivities. Radio next button. I was the center of attention, and many important people dropped by to say hello. I was even given a gift by one of them. It was a beautifully enchanted ring to enhance the bravery I had already shown. Diplomacy plus 10, gained Ring of Courage. Everyone was sad that King Norbert had died. He had been a good king. We all had great hopes for our new monarch, King Gareth. The kingdom of Daria waited in eager anticipation to see what kind of king he would be. My illusion teacher took the occasion to implement a unique type of test. Our class gathered that night to cast entertainments into the sky for everyone to enjoy. I made up a fake cultural reason to get out of doing it. Needs 20 geography, dimmed. I cheated by making a special mixture using fertilizer. Needs 20 agriculture, dimmed. I studied really hard, at the expense of my other classes. Radio button, checked, 3 of 4. I didn't even bother to try. Radio button.
Post a comment out of list with clickable but toggle button you were angling for. Heather 6:18 p.m. Not necessarily. With that mix of physical and necromancy, I wasn't sure what type you were angling for. Heather buttons clickable but toggle button. Heather 6:13 p.m. Where are you going with?
I mean, just because I'm going necromancy doesn't mean I can't have a strong character. I mean, gotta have a balance of physical and magical, or else the character really is not worth playing.
Toggle click but Heather you were toggle click buttons out of list button hide current comment.
Next button. I did next. I learned enough to get by. I created a few balls of light that soared up into the clouds, and it was enough to get a passing grade. Willpower plus 3, alchemy minus 2, conjuration minus 2, divination minus 2, enchantment minus 2, illusion plus 12, summoning minus 2, transmutation minus 2. My days in the academy were numbered. I only had one more year after this one. Perhaps this was the reason that I started thinking about romance. I was still madly in love with Sherry. Radio button, checked, 1 of 4. Although I was dating Sherry, I was secretly in love with Patrick, my friend from the village. I decided to break up with Sherry and follow my heart's true desire. Radio, although I was dating Sherry, I was secretly in love with Ryan, my friend from the academy. I decided to break up with Sherry and follow my heart's true desire. Radio button, feeling the need to be single, it was time for Sherry and me to break up. Radio button, next button. I took Sherry to the tournament yards to watch the jousting and sword fighting. It was a very popular form of entertainment. We held hands as we walked around the tournament. There was a lot going on. We watched the bards putting on a show. Radio button. I entered myself into the sword fighting competition. I took Sherry. I entered myself into the sword fighting competition. Needs 10 gold. Dimmed. Radio button. Unchecked. 2 of 3.
Damn it.
We watched the jousting. Radio button. Check. Next. The knights charged down the lanes, knocking one another off their horses. It was very exciting, and we both cheered on our favorite champions. It was a lot of fun, and I could see how such tactics could be useful in a real battle. Warcraft plus 10. We had a wonderful time at the tournament and returned to the academy that night. We went to my room and made love. Radio button, checked, 1 of 2. We had a beautiful goodnight kiss and went to our separate rooms. Radio button, next button. It was very sweet. I was madly in love with Sherry. Whatever the future after the academy held in store and the challenges it would bring, I knew that I would be at her side. My studies in the tower didn't deal exclusively with magic. The royal wizard, Frolden, was a great example. As the court mage, he was constantly being relied upon to know about the world around him in order to effectively advise the king. Sometimes a wizard's sagely knowledge was just as beneficial as their arcane power. I studied a little of everything. Radio button. Checked. 1 of 9. I studied a lot about agriculture. I studied a lot about diplomacy. Diplomacy. 10. Radio button. Unchecked. 3 of 9. I studied a lot about economics. Economics. 5. Radio. I studied a lot about geography. Geography. 0. Radio. I studied a lot about history. History. 0. I studied a lot about religion. Religion. 5. I studied a lot about smithing. Smithing. 30. I studied a lot about Warcraft. Warcraft. 10. Radio. Next. Button. I felt that it would be best if I were well-rounded. Agriculture +3. Diplomacy +3. Economics +3. Geography +3. History +3. Religion +3. Smithing +3. Warcraft +3. My 5th and final year at the academy was very thrilling. I had been hearing about Archmage Lacey's private library since I first arrived. I decided to try to break in. Needs 30 thievery. Dimmed. I was invited in. Needs 30 made guild faction. Radio button. Checked. 2 of 4. I learned of a way to sneak in. Needs 35 history. Dimmed. I had no idea how to get inside. Radio. Next. I was in the common area late one night when Master Durgan, the doorkeeper, came in to get the midnight snack. His small stature made him very quiet as he entered unobtrusively. "How are your studies going?" he asked me in a friendly tone. "They're going well, but I'm having some troubles with recursive enchantments. There's a book in the Archmage's library that explains it very well. Come along." I got up immediately, astounded by my luck. He led me across the academy to the Archmage's quarters, the torchlight reflecting on his bald head. He opened the door to the library and we were just about to enter when he said that he had forgotten an important task that he needed to do. I had no idea what he could have forgotten about that late at night, but I said that it was all right. He apologized and said that he'd get me the book the next day. He closed the door and hurried away. But the door didn't latch. It was ironic, considering that he was the doorkeeper. So, I went in. Radio button. Checked. 1 of 2. I closed the door and returned to my studies. Radio button. Unchecked. Next. I didn't want the kindly old man to get in any trouble, and I certainly didn't want to get in trouble myself. The contents of the Archmage's library remained a mystery to me at that time. Good +10, main guild +15. My transmutation class was pretty boring, although it might just have been the teacher. We always seemed to be doing the same things, turn a stone into bronze, then to iron, then to gold. That might sound like it should have been financially lucrative, but it wasn't. We used to spend hours in order to create the tiniest bit of gold from another material. I think I could have made the same amount of money for the time it took working at a normal job. I knew that transmutation would eventually allow you to turn an enemy to stone, or to craft an item into giving it special powers, but that was very advanced magic.
Post a comment out of list. Click a toggle button. Heather 6:23 p.m. Can't get gold without a job or starting a business.
Nope.
Buttons. Click a toggle you were angling for. Click button. Start comment. Out of list button. Hide current comment.
Given a finely crafted statue of King Gareth at the beginning of the year. They had all been sculpted from stone by very talented artisans. Our task was to convert the statue into ruby, the royal gemstone. I cheated by finding another ruby statue of King Gareth. Needs 10 mage faction and 10 thievery. Radio button. Checked. 1 of 4. I cheated by making one the old-fashioned way. Needs 15 economics and 65 gold. Dimmed. Radio button. Unchecked. 2 of 4. I cheated. I studied really hard at the expense of my other classes. Radio button. Unchecked. 3 of 4. Checked. I didn't even. Next button. I had to stay up late for many nights to convert the entire statue to ruby. It was hard to do the small pieces, like a lock of hair or little finger. I accidentally broke off an ear, and the fingers on the left hand never completely converted into gem. It was enough to pass, so I was content. Willpower +3, alchemy -2, Conjuration -2, Divination -2, Enchantment -2, Illusion -2, Summoning -2, Transmutation +12. I had continued to meet with the secret society of necromancers once a week for 5 years. I still didn't know the identities of the others, but I had learned a lot in my time. One night, things were much different. The group was smaller, as there were only 14 of us. The other 13 with me all wore the silver skull pendant necklaces, being the leaders of the secret society. I had been singled out as the top necromancer of my year, but my learning was far from over. How committed are you to learning the darkest of the arts? They asked me. I am committed. A sacrifice of personal value must be made. I offered to sacrifice Patrick, my friend from home. Radio button checked. 1 of 4.
Oh God, dude, Jesus. Okay. Well, that's the first choice that came up.
I offered to sacrifice Ryan, my friend from the academy. Radio button unchecked. I offered to sacrifice Sherry, my girlfriend.
Yeah,
Radio button
no,
unchecked.
not happening.
3 if I refused to do it, deciding that I didn't want to learn necromancy in this way. Radio button I offered to sacrifice Ryan, my friend from the academy. Radio button unchecked. 2 of 4.
Post a out of list. Click toggle. Header 6:23 p.m. Can't get gold.
Oh boy.
I offered to sacrifice Patrick, my friend from home. Radio button. Next, I eagerly accepted their task, deciding to kill my childhood friend, Patrick, as a sacrifice. It was several weeks later when I was brought back to the altar by the 13 leaders. I immediately saw that the day had come. Patrick was lying across the stone surface, tied up and gagged. I stepped forward and took the offered silver knife from the hands of one of my mentors. My cut was clean and swift. It was over in moments. It was a tremendous sacrifice, and I could tell that my audience was very pleased with my dedication to the black art. I was shown some very powerful necromancy that night, as the undead was raised before me in ghost form, which quickly dissipated into the nether. I had learned a lot, but not enough to capture spirits yet. After the ceremony was complete, I returned to my room. I was amazed at how much I had learned about necromancy in my 5 years at the academy. Evil +50, necromancy +20.
Well, okay.
Next button.
This is fun.
Toggle button. Header 6:23. Top click buttons. Header 6:29 p.m. I hope not.
You hope not what?
Toggle clickable button. Start out of list button. Hide current comment.
Next button.
List with 11. Clickable button. Toggle button. Header 6:29 p.m. I hope not.
Oh boy. I mean, what, you think I was going to sacrifice my girlfriend? No.
Toggle but clickable buttons. Out of list button. Hide current. List with 11 items. Click talk. Header 6:20. Talk. Out of list button. Hide current.
Next button. It was a nervous time for all students when they reached the end of their 5th year. The courses had been difficult, and although I had learned a lot of magic, I was afraid of what my final grades would be. I remember being called into Archmage Lacey's office to see my final evaluation. CL, his raven, sat on a wooden stand in the corner as I looked over my grades. Final transcript for Morgana. Alchemy, passed.
Yeah.
Conjuration, passed.
Yes.
Divination, passed.
Oh yeah.
Enchantment, passed.
Yay.
Illusion, passed.
Yeah.
Summoning, passed. Transmutation, passed. I breathed a great sigh of relief. I had passed all of my courses. I would be graduating and receiving my wizardly robes. I was the first of my kind to graduate from the academy. It was a historic moment. This victory was even more exhilarating, due to my extra studies as a necromancer. Congratulations, Archmage Lasha said as Sia watched me from her stand with her black, shiny eyes. I had done it. I was a graduate of the academy. This was a great accomplishment for me, and I knew that it would definitely set me off on the right foot for the next stage of my life. gain wizardly robes. I remember packing up my bags, books, and other belongings. The academy had been my home for 5 years, and I was a little nervous about what the future held. At least I wouldn't be alone. Shadow, my dog, would be at my side. Even though I no longer had a schedule or teachers, my education as a wizard was far from over. I would continue to grow and learn for the rest of my life. I had a large decision to make. I had to decide if I would continue to be a necromancer or if I should generalize my studies. I decided to specialize. I would become a necromancer. Radio button, checked, 1 of 2. I decided to diversify. I would study all of the magical arts. Radio, next, button. I left the academy and returned to Elmvale, my home village. Dash, my horse, seemed eager to be on the road.
List with 12 items. Click up top header 6:31 p.m. Hope you wouldn't sacrifice anyone.
Well, yeah, I guess not. But if I did that, then I wouldn't be able to do what I was intending to do, which there's one way to survive this game as far as I know, and that's becoming a lich. But I don't know if there's other ways with the other types of magic, if you can survive the game, because I really haven't played this game much. I only beat it while playing the necromancer, so I don't know. Guess we'll have to see. And I'm sorry if that made you uncomfortable. I really don't mean to make people uncomfortable when I do these playthroughs, so.
Toggle click up button start out of list button hide current comment.
Cherry rushed out to greet me with a hug and a kiss, glad that I had returned.
Hello.
I had a lot to think about, now that my life as a student was over. The next logical step for any wizard was to find traveling companions and set out on an adventure. I stayed a few weeks in my village, but I knew that this was no longer my home. I tearfully said goodbye to everyone, explaining that I needed some time alone to find my place in the world. I promised that I would send word as soon as I could. I mounted Dash and left my village. My destiny awaited. Next chapter, button. I spent some time looking for a suitable adventuring party, which was more difficult than I had thought. I think that being a troll was making things even more difficult. I knew that I'd need a fighter, a thief, and a cleric. A strong fighter would keep the enemies away while I cast my magic, a dexterous thief would open locks and find traps, and a wise cleric would heal us all when trouble occurred. Even though I could do a little of each job, I knew that it was important to have specialists so that I could concentrate on my magic. After nearly a year of searching, I came upon the solution. I would form the party myself. I rented a room at the Full Cup Inn in Tornassa and began to accept applicants. Cherry moved in with me and the innkeeper was nice enough to let us stay for free, provided that I promised to help with security or any other troubles that routinely cropped up.
Post out of list clickable toggle header 6:36 p.m. Not uncomfortable. I'm just not used to the ways of a necro.
Ah, okay, I see. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. There's actually a necro way in the Lost Air trilogy too. I've done that myself. Fun, but it makes it a lot harder to do stuff in the game.
First, I had to hire someone for the fighter position. I considered my friend from the academy, Ryan, for the fighter position. Radio button, checked, 1 of 4. I considered Cherry, my girlfriend, for the fighter position. Radio button, unchecked. I considered Grom, a dwarf who applied for the job, for the fighter position. Needs to have graduated at 25 gold, dimmed. I considered Stuart, a man who applied for the job, for the fighter position. Radio button, next, button. Reasons to hire Ryan for the fighter position. I trusted his friendship. Reasons against. No fighting experience, trained as a wizard instead. Overall fighter rating, 1. Yes. Hire Ryan for the fighter position. Radio button. Checked. 1 of 2. No. Hire some. Next. But first, I consider Stewart. Next. I consider. Check. Next. Got reasons to hire Stewart for the fighter position. He applied for the job. Reasons against. Low fighting experience. Has no equipment. Overall fighter rating, 2.
You have no equipment. God damn it, son of a bitch.
Yes. No. Next. But first, I consider Cherry, my girlfriend, for the fighter position. Checked.
Toggle click button start out of list button hide current list click top header 636 top click out of list.
I can next. Reasons to hire Sherry for the fighter position. I was in love. Reasons against. No fighting experience. Overall fighter rating, 1. Yes. No. Next. First. Next. I consider. Check. Next. Reasons to. Reason. Low has no overall. Yeah. Next. I had to hire someone for the thief position. I considered my friend from the academy, Ryan, for the thief position. Radio. I considered Cherry, my girlfriend. I considered Cal, the athlete who applied for the job, for the thief position. Needs to have graduated at 25 gold. Dimmed. I considered Mary. Next. Button. Reasons to hire Sherry for the thief position. I was in love. Reasons against. No thieving experience. Overall thief rating, 1. Yes. No. Next. I considered Mary's, a woman who applied for the job, for the thief position. Radio button. Check. Next. Reasons to hire Mary's for the thief position. She applied for the job. Reasons against. Low thieving experience. Has no equipment. Overall thief rating, 1. Yes. Next. Finally, I had to hire someone for the cleric position. I considered my friend from the academy, Ryan, for the cleric position. I considered next. Reasons to hire Sherry for the cleric position. I was in love. Reasons against. No cleric experience, but willing to learn.
Oh, well, okay, there you go.
Overall cleric rating, 1. Yes. Next. My party was complete. The 4 of us had a good long talk about the kinds of missions.
List with 12 items buttons. Click toggle button. Header 6:39 p.m. Do your own fighting.
That my partners were terrible. Money. The fighters
Wish I could.
The cleric offered it all to charity, and the thief lost it through gambling as fast as it was made. The result was that I was left to outfitting the party.
Wish I could do my own fighting.
We looked over our equipment and trained in our skills before we left. Equip Stewart, the fighter, radio button, check. Equip Mary's, the equip Sherry. Train Stewart myself. Needs fighting skill, radio button. Train Mary's, train Sherry. Next, we trained for many hours. I was able to teach Stewart a few things. We looked over our equip Stewart, train Stewart myself. Needs fighting skill, dimmed. Train Mary's myself. Needs thievery skill, dimmed. Radio button, unchecked, 5 of 7. Train Sherry myself. Needs healing skill, radio button, checked. Next, we trained for many hours. I was able to teach Sherry a few things. We looked over our equipment and trained in our skills before we left.
Toggle button. Clickable button start out of list button hot list click toggle header 6:39 p.m. Do your own fighting. Top clickable buttons out of list button hide current comment.
Journey onward, radio button, unchecked, 7 of 7. Next, we packed up our belongings and left the tavern. Our first job came to us where first jobs usually did. We were sitting around the full cup and drinking. We were also discussing tactics, but often the useful conversation gave way to the useless after as the night wore on. A caravan guard from a nearby town came into our tavern complaining that he had been robbed. He said that a group of kobold bandits were charging people a toll for using the Kingdom Road. It was a small band, so the Royal Guards hadn't been sent. This was our chance to begin our new careers. We left immediately. Dash, my horse, was very impatient at our slow progress. I knew that we would have to get mounts for everyone eventually if we wanted to take jobs that were further away. We hadn't gone far down the forest road when 5 kobolds stepped in front of us. Give us your money, they exclaimed upon our arrival.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I cast several firebolts at them. Needs 20 conjuration, dimmed. I told them that they didn't have the legal right to collect a toll on that road. Needs 20 geography, dimmed. I told Stuart to attack. Needs fighter power 4, radio button, checked, 3 of 4. I didn't think we were ready. Next, but there weren't too many of them, so I sent Stuart into the fray. Stuart had no trouble bashing their little reptile skulls in. I even learned a few tricks while watching. There weren't 2 men fighting +5, Warcraft +5. It was a good victory and a nice start to our adventuring days. We returned to the tavern and told everyone that the road was now safe. A few caravanners gave us some gold for our troubles. I happily accepted the reward, radio. I demanded more money for our efforts, radio. I told them that no reward was necessary. Next, but it was our rightful pay, and we needed the money. Gold +60, fame +1. We spent several days at the Full Cup Inn as we looked for our next job. There was a dwarf shopkeeper who had a task for us. A couple of orcs had stolen his wife's diamond necklace. We learned that the orcs had a camp just outside of Tornassa. It wasn't difficult to find the orc encampment. We spoke to the 3 warriors who were living there, and they said that they took the necklace because the dwarf owed them money for services that they had provided but hadn't been paid for. They claimed to have been working as guards for the dwarf store. I wasn't sure about this arrangement. Perhaps if they had been half ORCS it would have made sense, but full orcs were not reliable and likely wouldn't have been hired. I felt that they deserved the necklace, so I told them so, even though it meant we would fail the quest. Needs 20 personality, dimmed. I sent in Mary's, the thief, to steal it back. Needs thief power 5, dimmed. I cast an enchantment spell to make the orcs want to give me the necklace. Needs 30 enchantment, dimmed. I cast a transmutation spell to turn the ground into mud. Needs 20 transmutation, radio button, checked, 4 of 5. I didn't see any safe way to next, but the ground turned to thick mud and the orcs sunk down to their waists. Transmutation +10. I proceeded to slit their throats, radio button, checked, 1 of 2. I explained to them what was happening and took the necklace without harming them, radio button, unchecked, 2 of 2. Check, next. They weren't happy with us, but they had no choice. Orc faction +5, diplomacy +10, good +5. We returned the necklace to the dwarf shopkeeper for our reward, radio button, check. I gave them back the necklace and told them that no reward was necessary. We kept the necklace and sold it, radio button, next, button. The dwarf and his wife were very happy to get the diamond necklace back. They gave us a nice reward too. Dwarf faction +10, gold +65, fame +1. I was beginning to get used to living at the Full Cup Inn. It got loud at times, but it was nice to be so close to my party. The room I shared with my girlfriend Sherry was just the right size. It wasn't always peaceful. I remember the time Stuart, our fighter, got drunk and came into our room, radio button, checked, 1 of 2. I remember the time I caught Mary's, our thief, stealing from me, radio button, unchecked, next. As if it wasn't bad enough to have an intruder in our room, imagine my anger when Stuart started hitting on Sherry. I forgave Stuart, and it never happened again. I blasted Stuart with magic, radio button, next, button. Stuart had been so drunk he didn't even remember it. Diplomacy +10. It was in my first year of adventuring that rumors about King Garrett's rule began to surface. I had a front row seat for the event because we came across a job from His Royal Highness. A bounty was posted for an escaped orc prisoner. The 250 gold reward drew bounty hunters and adventurers from across the land, all of us hoping to capture the prisoner first.
Post a comment out of list clickable toggle but Heather 6:44 p.m. or maybe he does. But click top Heather 6:42 p.m. This author doesn't give you very good choices. Sometimes, does he?
Nah, he does.
Buttons click talk Heather 6:39 p. Talk click but Heather 6:44 p.m. or maybe he does. Talk click button star comment out of list button hide current comment.
After a few days of searching Tornasa with no success, we tried the new tactic. I used my divination magic. Needs 15 divination, radio button, check. We spent a lot of money on. I used my contacts in the Thieves Guild to find him. Needs 10 Thieves Guild faction, dimmed. We found his cellmate and tortured him, radio. We were unable to find him, radio. Next, but my spell shimmered in the air, showing the orc very clearly. He had gotten across most of Daria and was waiting for a ship along the eastern coast. It was no wonder that nobody found him in Tornassus since the Silver Sea was on the other side of Daria. We left immediately. Divination plus 10, geography plus 5. My horse wasn't ideal since he wasn't trained for combat, and I knew I could get dash trained for 350 gold. I had dash trained, dimmed, I didn't have dash trained, ready. Next, but I was happy with the way dash was and saw no need for extra training at that time. It was a long way to the Silver Sea, especially since only I had a mount. It was about time we were mounted, so I bought horses for my 3 companions. Needs 210 gold, dimmed. It was about time we were mounted, so I stole horses for my 3 companions. Needs 35 thievery, dimmed. I summoned horses using my magic. Needs 35 summoning, dimmed. We had no choice but to walk the entire way. Radio button, checked, 4 Next, it was a very long walk. It took us over a month to finally get to the Silver Sea. It also cost us a lot of money and food, travel gear and renting rooms and inns. Gold minus 60. The smell of salt hung in the air as we arrived at the shores of the Silver Sea. I saw large ships of the blue ocean for the first time in my life. We got to work, looking for the orc once again. When we asked around, we were given very specific directions to a street down by the docks. It seemed like luck was with us. We went to the seaside and searched where we were told. The alley was dark and smelled of fish. I'll never forget seeing that enormous fist flying right towards my face. I took the punch, not letting it slow me down. Needs 30 body, radio button, check. I blocked the punch. Needs 25 fighting, radio button, unchecked. I fought through the dizziness. Needs 30 willpower, dimmed. I conjured a very quick shield. Needs 25 conjuration, dimmed. I awoke a few minutes later, radio. Next, but my hand moved out of instinct and knocked the punch aside before it could hit me. The sailors who had ambushed us were very surprised. Fighting plus 10. There were 6 sailors in total, and they were all large, muscular men. I let Stuart handle it. Needs fighter power 4, radio button, check. I sprayed the sailors with hard balls of ice. Needs 25 conjuration, dimmed. I threw punches right back at them. Needs 25 fighting, radio button. I created the illusion of a sea monster. Needs 25 illusion, dimmed. I summoned a swarm of spiders. Needs 25 summoning, dimmed. I pled for mercy, radio. Next, but it wasn't my first street brawl. I stood side by side with Stuart and fought the sailors using their own methods. Together, we won the fight. Fighting plus 10. The sailors turned on the orc right away, telling us everything. They had been hired to slow down any pursuers in order to allow him a chance to get away. We went immediately to where we were told he could be found. We found him at a seaside bar called the Rusty Harpoon, where the orc was sitting at a table and having a drink. I cast an enchantment spell upon him, forcing him to come with us. Needs 20 enchantment, radio button, checked, 1 of 5. I got Stuart to rough him up a bit. Needs fighter power 5, dimmed. I talked him into coming back to Tornassus with us. Needs 40 personality, dimmed, radio button. I brewed a sleeping potion and slipped it into his drink. Needs 20 alchemy, radio button, unchecked, 4 of 5. We had no choice but to try to capture him, radio. Next, but it was easy, with a little magic. After I cast this spell, he followed along and did as he was told. All we needed to do was return to Tornassus. Enchantment plus 10. The return trip went better than I suspected. I asked the orc prisoner why he had been locked up. I honestly don't know, the orc said. I was the official ambassador to the orc nation. It makes no sense for your king to have thrown in the dungeons. Memories of the orc attack on my village went through my head as he spoke. I guessed that he must be connected in some way, despite what he claimed. I spoke to the prisoner a lot during the trip back. Needs 30 personality, dimmed. We played just every night during our trip back. Needs 15 Warcraft, radio button, check. I was cruel to him during the trip. I was civil to the prisoner. Be careful to keep our boundaries professional, radio button, next, but he was a pretty good player and even taught me some good moves. Warcraft plus 15.
Post it out of it. List click toggle but Heather 6:44 p.m. or maybe he does.
We finally arrived in Tornassa. It was good to be home. We took the orc directly to the royal castle and were granted an immediate audience with King Gareth. It had only been 2 years since the coronation, but it looked like he had aged 10 years instead. His hair was still black, but he had a weariness in his eyes that spoke of many sleepless nights. Put the orc in no dungeons, he screamed to his guards, spittle flying from his lips. He left without granting us a reward, but Wizard Freelton was there to make things right. Thank you for your service, the white-bearded wizard said as he gave us our reward. We heard about the public execution a few days later, and naturally we attended. Gold plus 250, fame plus 1, royal faction plus 10, kingdom faction plus 20. It was a cold and wet day, but the courtyard was filled with people. There hadn't been an execution in Daria for nearly 100 years. Many of the citizens thought that it was barbaric, but they came anyway to see history in the making. King Gareth watched from his balcony, his black hair waving in the wind. He didn't address the crowd. Instead, he simply watched the proceedings with his dark eyes. The orc was escorted to the noose by a pair of royal guards, but no words were said as they put the rope around his neck. I called out, demanding to know what his crimes were. Radio button. I was happy to see the orc die since it was his kind that had attacked my village. I started throwing rocks at him. Radio button. I said nothing and simply watched. Radio button. Next button. The guard tagged him as everyone looked on quietly. I glanced up at King Gareth and saw something strange in his eyes. A slow smile crept across his face as the orc dangled from the end of the noose. I began to question the king's sanity at that point. Royal faction plus 5, diplomacy plus 10. We were very fortunate to have the patronage of the full covenant for our base of operations. The deal was that we would help the owner if he ever ran into trouble. We had been staying there nearly a year before we were needed. A group of fighters from the Fighters Guild were drinking and not paying. They claimed that they were protecting the inn, but since this was our job, we knew they were lying. I cast an illusion of filth over the place every time they entered. Needs 25 illusion, dimmed. I poisoned their drinks, killing the entire group. Needs 30 nature, dimmed. I told them about a bar that they might like better. Needs 30 geography, dimmed. I summoned cockroaches to drive them away. Needs 25 summoning, dimmed. I had no choice but to tell the town guard. Radio button, checked. 5 of 5. Next, but it was a little embarrassing to take my problems to the authorities, but it worked. They were told to pay or leave, and they got angry and left. At least we got our bar back. Fighter Guild minus 15. One day, a richly dressed halfling purchased our services. My family graveyard is no longer resting in peace. Several of my deceased relatives have been seen wandering the grounds.
Button start comment. Clickable button. Toggle button not Heather 6:42 p.m. is toggle clickable button start out of list button hide current.
Sherry, our cleric, was eager to go. This was exactly the type of mission that religious people enjoyed so much. We looked over our equipment and trained in our skills before we left. Equip Steward, the fighter. Equip Sherry. Train Steward myself. Needs fighting skill, dimmed. Train Mary's myself. Needs thievery skill, dimmed. Train Sherry myself. Needs healing skill. Dim. Journey on. Next. Buck. Our fighter. A human named Steward of Skill. 4. Wielding his hands. Buy an enchanted sword. Needs 2,000 gold. Dimmed. Smith a regular sword. Needs 15 smithing. Radio. Buy a regular sword. Smith a regular. Check. Buy a craft an enchanted sword. Needs 50 smithing and 50 transmutation. Dimmed. Craft a sword of death. Needs 50 smithing, 25 transmutation, and 65 necromancy. Dimmed. Radio button. Unchecked. 5 of 9.
Damn it!
Craft the gauntlets of strength. Needs 25 healing, 25 transmutation, and 10 gold. Radio button. Unchecked. 6 of 9.
Ooh, I can do that.
Give the ring of courage to craft the gauntlet. Checked. Give the craft the helm of battle insight. Needs 50 divination, 25 transmutation, and 15 gold. Dimmed. Do something else. Next, I purchased a pair of really nice gauntlets. I then cast the transmutation spell upon them, changing them and imbuing them with the healing property of strength. The result was very good. I had crafted the legendary gauntlets of strength. Stuart was more than happy to wear them. Gold minus 10. We looked over our next, our fighter, a human named Steward of Skill, 5, wielding his hands. Equipped with the legendary gauntlets of strength. Buy an enchanted sword. Smith a regular sword. Check. Buy a regular sword. Needs 50. Craft an enchanted sword. Needs 50 smithing and 50 transmutation. Dim. Craft a sword of death. Needs give the ring of craft the helm of back. Do something. Next, I borrowed a smithy from a blacksmith I knew in Tornassa. I proceeded to forge a standard blade for Stuart. It was good work. We looked over our equipment and trained in our equip Mary's. Checked. Next, our thief, a human named Mary's of Skill, 1, wielding her hands. Buy an enchanted dagger. Needs 1,500 gold. Dim.
Jesus.
Radio button. Smith a regular dagger. Needs 15 smithing. Radio button. Check. Buy a regular dagger. Craft an enchanted dagger. Needs 25 smithing and 50 transmutation. Dimmed. Craft a dagger of sharpness. Needs 50 smithing and 60 transmutation. Dimmed.
God
Radio button.
damn it.
Checked. 5 of 9. Craft the boots of silence. Needs 25 illusion, 25 transmutation, and 8 gold. Dimmed. Radio button.
Fuck.
Check. 6 of 9.
God damn it. I just. Okay. Yep. This is fun.
Craft the cloak of shadows. Needs 45 illusion, 25 transmutation, and 15 gold. Dimmed. Craft the collection of poisons. Needs 45 alchemy and 50 nature. Dimmed. Do something up. Next, I borrowed a smithy from a blacksmith I knew in Tornassa. I proceeded to forge a standard dagger for Mary's. It was good work. We looked over equip Sherry. Check. Trained. Next, our cleric, an elf named Sherry of Skill, 4, wielding her hands. Buy an enchanted mace. Needs 2,000 gold.
God, why are you
Radio
guys so
button. Unchecked.
expensive?
1 of 9. Smith a regular mace. Needs 15 smithing. Radio button.
List with
Check.
clickable
2
toggle
of 9.
Heather 7 o'clock PM. I wonder if you should be concentrated more heavily on necro. Then again, maybe not. Buttons clickable toggle button Heather 6:44 PM, or maybe he does.
I just gotta. If I would have had more transmutation and freaking other stuff, could have done that, but. Whatever.
Toggle button clickable button Heather toggle click button start out of list button hide current.
It's fine.
Buy a regular mace. Craft an enchanted mace. Needs 35 smithing, 35 transmutation, and 35 alchemy. Dimmed. Craft a holy mace. Needs 35 smithing, 35 transmutation, and 50 religion. Dimmed. Radio button. Unchecked. 5 of 9.
You guys, you suck right now. This just ugh.
Craft the elixir of wisdom.
What?
50 alchemy and 25 divination. Dimmed. Find the ancient holy symbol. Needs 30 geography, 50 history, and 35 religion. Dimmed. Craft the healer's kit. Needs 30 alchemy, 30 nature, and 30 healing. Dimmed. Do something else next. I borrowed a smithy from a blacksmith I knew in Tornassa. I proceeded to forge a standard mace for Sherry. It was good work. We looked over our equipment and trained in our skills before we left. Train steward myself. Needs fighting skill. Dim. Train marries myself. Needs thievery skill. Dim. Train Sherry myself. Needs healing skill. Dim. Journey onward. Read. Next, we packed up our belongings and left the tavern. The halfling's estate was just outside of Tornassa, so I left Ash in the stables and we walked. We found his home easily and went straight to the graveyard. The mausoleum doors were locked, so we acquired a key and went inside. We didn't go far before the first halfling zombies approached us. Sherry turned them. Needs cleric power 4. Radio button. Check. I used my dark magic to bind the halflings to my will. Needs 25 necromancy. Radio button. Unchecked. 2 of 4.
Okay. Could do that option.
I roasted the halfling zombies with flame. Needs 20 conjuration. Dimmed. Radio button. Unchecked.
Wow,
3
I
of 4.
really don't have anything. Holy shit.
Post a comment out of list. Click toggle. Heather 7:03 p.m. Okay. You know better than I do.
I'm not trying to be like, oh, I know how to do this, but in the new, I appreciate suggestions. Okay, the way I did this did not work out in the best way. I was not trying to make you feel bad at all, Heather, because I do appreciate your comments, and you're one of the only people who watches these, so I appreciate it. Well, I could either have them turned, or I can bind them to my will.
We smashed them with our weapons. Radio button. Unchecked. 4 of 4. Sherry turned them. I used my dark magic to... Next, they weren't very large, but they were mine. I paraded them around for a bit, seeing how much control I had over them. I even had them speaking. They mentioned a secret door up ahead that we might be interested in. I was pretty sure that with more skill, I could have kept them as my slaves permanently. Unfortunately, my magic wasn't strong enough at that time, so after a few minutes, they collapsed to the ground, lifeless. Sherry was disappointed that her turning wasn't needed. Necromancy plus 10.
Yay!
We followed the corridor some more and found ourselves at a dead end. There didn't seem to be anywhere to go, but it didn't seem likely that we would be hired just to get rid of a couple of zombies.
Toggle click up buttons. Heather 7:05 p.m. Go with the necro. Second choice. Toggle click up buttons. Heather 7:05 p.m. Oh, I don't feel bad. Toggle click buttons. Out of list button. Hide current comment.
I used my divination to find the way. Needs 20 divination. Radio button. Check. I suspected something about the crypt. Needs 25 religion. Dimmed. I found the door that the halfling zombies had told me about. Radio button. I could sense something magical. Needs 25 arcana. Radio button. We return to the next, but I found the answer. A secret passage. We pulled on the torch sconce and a section of the wall opened up to reveal a dark corridor. Divination plus 10. The corridor took us to a well-lit chamber. I saw the markings on the walls and floor. Someone had been doing some very powerful magic. I immediately suspected necromancy, someone trying to raise the dead. The focus of the power led me to the center of the designs, where the mummified remains of a halfling lay. He was still dead, but I wasn't sure for how much longer. Suddenly, 5 other halflings burst into the crypt. They were wearing priestly gowns and held long, sharp knives. I took control of the dead halfling, raising him myself. Needs 40 necromancy. Radio. I cast chain lightning from my fingertips. I summoned an ogre. Needs 30 summoning. Dim. I let Stuart handle it. I enchanted the cultists to fight each other. Needs 30 enchantment. Radio button. Unchecked. 5 of 6. Check. We ran away as next, but it was a nice piece of magic. The 5 cultists began slashing at each other with their blades. We simply stood back and watched as the halflings did our work for us. Within moments, it was over and all 5 cultists lay dead on the ground. Enchantment +10, fighting +5, Warcraft +5. The halfling who had hired us returned to the crypt. I am ashamed to say that those cultists are relatives of mine, he said, his eyes on the dead halfling on the slab in front of us. This was my great-great-grandfather. I believe that they were planning to raise him in order to have him retroactively change his will and give the estate to their side of the family. Please clean this up before you leave, he said as he handed over a large bag of gold and left the crypt. Gold +180, fame +1. I studied the undead halfling, curious as to the powers being used. Radio button, loot. He asked us to clean up, so I really cleaned up. Radio button, unchecked, 2 of 4. I took the gold and left things where they were. I tidied up the crypt. Be careful to leave all of the valuables with the deceased bodies. Radio. Next, I saw that the cultists had gotten a few things right, but still wasn't convinced that they would have been successful. I learned a lot from what I saw. Necromancy +20.
There we go.
It was a nice, sunny day when an old man came into the folk hub inn with a job for us.
List with 12. Click toggle header 7:05 p.m. I don't feel bad. Top button star comment. Out of list button hide current comment.
My name is Ryan. I'm a former member of the Thieves Guild, he told us. I need an escort out of Tornessa. I'll be honest with you, I stole a large sum of money from the guild, and they're hunting me down. We did as he asked and tried to escape Tornessa. Radio. I cut his throat and took his stolen money for myself. Radio button. We took him directly to the Thieves Guild for a reward. Radio button. Next button. We took him up to our room to make a plan. The guild was powerful, and it would be good to cross them, but the man was willing to pay, so we took the job. I cast an illusion upon him. Needs 30 illusion. Dimmed. I knew the guild, so I went to the guild master to discuss leniency. Needs 20 thieves guild faction. Dimmed. I bribed every thief I saw on our way out of the city. Needs 90 gold. Radio button. Checked. 3 of 4. We put a disguise on him and tried to get out of the city. Radio button. Next. But it wasn't the most cost-effective method, but it worked. We met up with 3 different groups of thieves, and each of them wanted a cut. There certainly was no honor among thieves that day. Gold minus 90. Bill Ryan was happy that we had gotten him out of the city. I used to be the guild's top poisoner, but it's a terrible line of work. I'll use this money to retire. You know, I can offer you more than money. He taught me the alchemy needed to brew poisons. Radio button. Checked. 1 of 4. He taught me that healing needed to heal poisons. Radio. I didn't accept the trade. I told him that no reward was necessary. Radio. Next. But it was really interesting to see some of the herbalism and mixtures that he used. Nature plus 15. Alchemy plus 15. I continued to hear terrible stories about King Garrett's reign. He had raised taxes every year since coming into power, but nobody knew where the money was going. Sherry, my girlfriend and traveling companion, heard that he was simply stockpiling in his treasury for reasons that nobody knew. Public executions had become commonplace in the capital city, yet the dungeons were still overflowing with prisoners from everyone the king had imprisoned. Even the other nations around Daria were beginning to become leery of Daria's monarch. People had already started to call him the Mad King at that time. It was a name that would be on everyone's lips as the years went on. We had a very surprising visitor enter the folk hub in one day. She was in disguise at first, asking for a private meeting. We took her up to our rooms before she removed her disguise. It was Princess Emily, the king's sister. Once she had removed her costume, I was surprised that I hadn't recognized her beautiful deep brown eyes. I'm afraid for my life, the princess stated bluntly as she flipped her long brown hair away from her slender neck. My brother has always been troubled, but since he gained the crown, his moods are even darker. He's suspicious of everything and has become increasingly cruel. He's planning to kill me. He doesn't want me to bear children since he has no heirs of his own. He's afraid that any child I have will become a threat to his reign. I intend to go to the elves. I know that they will grant me refuge in their forest. It sounded like a safe place for her to go since the elves would be able to protect her from King Gareth. I decided to take Princess Emily to the elves. Radio button. I decided not to help her. Radio. Next button. We looked over our equipment and trained in our skills before we left. Equip stewards. Equip Mary. Equip Sherry. Train steward. Train Mary. Train journey. Next. Our fighter. A human named Steward of Skill 6, wielding his sword. Equipped with the legendary Gauntlets with Strength. Buy an craft an enchanted sword. Needs 50 smithing and 50 transmutation. Dim. Craft the Sword of Death. Needs 50 smithing, 25 transmutation, and 65 necromancy. Dimmed. Give the Ring of Courage to Steward. Radio checked. 4 of 6. Craft the Helm of Battle Insight. Needs 50 divination, 25 transmutation, and 15 gold. Dimmed. Radio button. Unchecked. 5 of 6.
I need to improve my skills, damn it! That is starting to annoy me.
Post out of it. List with 12 items button. Start comment. Click talk. Heather 7:05 p.m. Oh, I don't feel bad. Talk out of list.
Oh god. Okay.
Do something else. Checked. Craft the helm. Do next button. We looked over equip Mary's the thief. Equip Mary. Checked. Equip train next. Our buy an enchanted craft an enchanted dagger. Needs 25 smithing and 50 transmutation. Dim. Craft the dagger of sharpness. Needs 50 smithing and 60 transmutation. Dim. Craft the boots of silence. Needs 25 illusion, 25 transmutation, and 8 gold. Dimmed. Craft the cloak of shadows.
Come on.
Needs 45 illusion, 25 transmutation, and 15 gold. Dimmed. Craft the collection of poisons. Needs 45 alchemy and 50 nature. Dimmed. Do something else. Next, we looked over our train Mary's Meister. Train Sherry Meister. Equip Sherry.
This is starting to annoy me.
Next, our cleric. An elf named Sherry of Skill 5, wielding her mace. Buy an craft an enchanted mace. Needs 35 smithing, 35 transmutation, and 35 alchemy. Dimmed. Craft the holy mace. Needs 35 smithing, 35 transmutation, and 50 religion. Dim. Craft the elixir of wisdom. Needs 50 alchemy and 25 divination. Dimmed. Find the ancient holy symbol. Needs 30 geography, 50 history, and 35 religion. Dim. Craft the healer's kit. Needs 30 alchemy, 30 nature, and 30 healing. Radio button. Checked. 6 of 7.
Okay, that I can do. Jesus, about damn time I can do something.
Do something else. Next, it took a combination of my alchemy skills and herbalism for my knowledge of nature, but when I was finished, I had crafted a very potent healer's kit. Sherry gratefully took it, knowing that it would allow her divine magic to last longer since they could use the kit for minor wounds. We looked over our equipment and trained in our skills before we left. Equip stewards, the fighter, radio button, checked. 1 of 7.
List with 13 items. Click toggle. Heather 7:14 p.m. Can't do any magic items.
Nope, can't. Not until I get better smithing, better transmutation, better illusion, and divination, and...
Equip, train steward myself. Needs fighting skill, dim. Train Mary's myself. Needs thievery skill, dim. Train Sherry myself. Needs healing skill, dim. Journey onward, rig. Next, we packed up our belongings and left the tavern. My horse wasn't ideal since he wasn't trained for combat. I knew I could get dash trained for 350 gold. I had him trained. Needs 350 gold. Radio button. Checked. 1 of 2.
Oh, there we go.
I didn't. Next, button dash learned many combat commands and not to shy away from the smell of blood or the sounds of fighting. Gold minus 350. Dash becomes a warhorse.
There we go. There we go, buddy.
It was a long trip. We would need horses for the rest of the party. It was about time we were mounted. I bought horses for my 3 companions. Needs 210 gold, dimmed. I stole horses for my 3 companions. I summoned horses using my magic. Needs 35 summoning, dimmed. We were forced to walk at their next button. It wasn't nearly as enjoyable, walking instead of riding at a normal pace, but we didn't have much choice. It also cost us a lot of money and food, travel gear and renting rooms at inns. We had to borrow the money since I didn't have enough. It cost 50 gold after the banker took his cut to process the loan. Gold minus 50. We left Tornassar with no trouble, heading due east. Princess Emily had done well. The king never knew she had left, so nobody chased us. We hadn't traveled far before running into trouble when a group of bandits surrounded us on the King's Road itself. This was no small band of stupid kobolds, but instead a pack of 20 well-armored and well-trained criminals. It was another sign of the deteriorating state of the kingdom. I created a burst of fire to burn them all. Needs 35 conjuration, dim, radio button, unchecked, 1 of 6. I created an illusion of a large group of the king's soldiers approaching. Needs 25 illusion, dimmed, I talked our way through. Needs 40 personality, dim. I wrote dash as the bandits, radio button, check. I cast an enchantment spell that made them all forget what they were doing. Needs 25 enchantment, radio button, unchecked. Check. I surrendered, allowing the bandits to go through our gear. Next button. The enchantment took hold and pandemonium ensued. The bandits started chatting and wandering away. None of them remembered what they had been doing. We left quickly before the spell faded. Princess Emily was very happy with my solution since it had caused no bloodshed. Royal faction plus 10, enchantment plus 10.
There we go, starting to build up that enchantment.
The remainder of the trip to the Alder Heart went smoothly, and the enormous ancient forest loomed up all around us as we entered. The path we took looked to be little more than an animal run, but Princess Emily assured us that it was the correct way. We traveled for a few hours. The feeling of being observed was very strong. Halt, a voice said from above. I looked up to see a dozen elves in the trees, many of them holding longbows. I suspected that there were even more that we couldn't see. I greeted them using the appropriate formalities. Needs 30 diplomacy, radio button, check. I set fire to their... I let Princess Emily speak for us. Next button. I knew the proper words and customs. The elves were happy to see someone knowledgeable about their heritage, and they came down out of the trees and escorted us to their city. Elf faction plus 20, diplomacy plus 10. The Elven city was beautiful to behold. The trees themselves were enormous and ancient. I had never seen anything like it. They were thicker than the man was tall and had shimmering silver leaves. Wooden bridges and spiraling walkways connected platforms high above us, and everywhere I looked I saw beautiful elves. Greetings, and welcome to Onii-Juin, the Elf Queen said graciously in Elven. Thank you, Princess Emily said, surprising me with her Elven language skills. I am eternally grateful for your hospitality. The Queen escorted the princess to her new home, and we were taken to a set of rooms to stay in. We stayed in Onii-Juin for several weeks while the princess settled in. I spent the days talking to the elves and learning about their ways. Radio button, checked. I spoke with the Elven spellbinders, learning about their magic. Radio. I snuck around the Elven city, stealing everything that wasn't nailed down. Needs 30 thievery, dimmed. I spent the days hiding in my room and studying my magic. I didn't want anything to do with the elves. Radio button, unchecked, 4 of 4. Next button, next button. It was a time of great learning for me. The elves were excellent hosts, happily showing us the sights and making us feel welcome. I walked among the craftsmen and played with the Elven children. Elf faction plus 20, nature plus 10, diplomacy plus 10. Near the end of my stay with the elves, I found Princess Emily alone in one of the gardens. The flowers were in bloom, and she looked very pretty, though a bit melancholy as she sat on a wooden bench amongst the green foliage. I flirted with the princess. Needs 40 personality, dimmed. I talked to her and tried to cheer her up. Radio, I called her a coward for leaving the kingdom. Radio, next button. I chatted with her and tried to cheer her up. We spent a few hours together in the garden and became friends. Personality plus 5, Royal faction plus 10. It was soon time to go. Princess Emily was settled into her new home, and I was
Toggle button, clickable button, comment, action, button, start comment, out of list button, hide, list, click, talk, header 7:14 p.m. Can't do any magic.
I could never forget my time among them. We returned to Tornassa, leaving the princess behind. Geography plus 5. The princess offered us our reward for helping her escape from her brother. I accepted the reward. I demanded more money. After all, what I had done would be considered treason. I told her that no reward was next. Button. She smiled in gratitude and gave us a nice sized bag of gold. Gold plus 400. Royal faction plus 10. Rumors of the princess having left the castle were rampant when I returned. Luckily, King Gareth never connected it to myself or my party. It was easy to see that the princess was correct. Had she stayed, she likely would have been imprisoned or killed. 4 years went by as we continued to do various jobs for various clients. We were slowly growing in fame and reputation. I continued my studies as a necromancer. Current skill, 75. I continued to study a little bit of everything. Radio button, unchecked, 2 of 2. Checked. Next, but I was content to keep my magical education well-rounded. Alchemy plus 3, conjuration plus 3, divination plus 3, enchantment plus 3, healing plus 3, illusion plus 3, necromancy plus 3, summoning plus 3, transmutation plus 3.
Okay, there we go.
I was careful to continue to study other things as well. I studied Arcana. Arcana, 36, radio button, checked, 1 of 12. I studied agriculture. Agriculture, 3, radio. I studied diplomacy. Diplomacy, 63, radio. I studied economics. Economics, 8, radio. I studied fighting. Fighting, 95, radio. Unchecked. I studied geography. Geography, 13, radio. I studied history. History, 3, I studied nature. Nature, 42, radio. I studied religion. Religion, 8, I studied smithing. Smithing, 33, radio button. I studied thievery. Thievery, 10. I studied warcraft. Warcraft, 38. Next button. I studied smithing. Smithing, 30. Check. Next. I studied every day, learning even more about smithing.
Toggle button, header 7:14, top click button, out of list button, hide.
Smithing plus 25.
There we go. Not going to be enough for me to do anything, but
I wasn't the only one who used their spare time to improve their skills. All of my companions continued to train and practice, although they all did well. Stuart improved the most, radio, but Mary's improved the most, radio. Sherry, nobody stood out. Next, but Mary's worked really hard, training and practicing until her skills improved. King Gareth's atrocities grew as the kingdom of Daria continued to fall apart. I saw more beggars and homeless people on the streets than ever before. Rumors of Princess Emily's exile gave the people hope, especially when gossip began to proclaim that she had married her childhood sweetheart, Duke Peter, and had a child with him. This was monumental. The current heir to the throne was now living in exile with the elves. It was probably for this very reason that the king married. The new queen was a young woman named Janice. We continued to work out of the full coven as the years passed, taking on many adventuring jobs and building a name for ourselves. I was 30 years old when I got a royal summons to meet King Gareth, who is now 40.
oh dear. Well, this could be not fun.
Post out of it, list, click toggle button, header 7:14 p.m. Talk buttons.
We looked over our equipment and trained in our skills before we left. Equip Stuart's, equip Mary's, equip Sherry, train Stuart, train Mary's myself. Needs thievery skill, dim, trick churn, next, our fuck equipped with the legendary gauntlet by craft an enchanted sword. Needs 50 smithing and 50 transmutation, dimmed, radio button.
Won't get the
unchecked,
smithing
206.
at least.
Craft the sword of death. Needs 50 smithing, 25 transmutation, and 65 necromancy, radio button. Checked. 3 of 6.
Yes! Oh, let's go.
Give the ring of courage. Craft the helm of battle insight. Needs 50 divination, 25 transmutation, and 15 gold. Dimmed. Do something. Next button. First, I used my skills as a weaponsmith to craft an excellent blade. Next, I cast a powerful transmutation spell upon the blade. At that point, it was already very powerful. But then I used my necromancy skills to bind several souls to the blade. It was truly epic, and Stuart was very pleased.
Yes, I did it! Yay!
We looked over our equipment. Equip Stuart. Equip Mary's. Check. Equip. Train. Next, our thief. A human named Mary's of skill. 3, wielding her dagger. Buy an enchanted. Craft an enchanted dagger. Needs 25 smithing and 50 transmutation. Dimmed. Craft a dagger of sharpness. Needs 50 smithing and 60 transmutation. Dimmed. Craft the boots of silence. Needs 25 illusion, 25 transmutation, and 8 gold. Dimmed. Radio.
Oh, come
Check. 4 of 7.
on.
Craft the cloak of shadows. Needs 45 illusion, 25 transmutation, and 15 gold. Dimmed. Craft the collection of poisons. Needs 45 alchemy and 50 nature. Dimmed. Do something else. Checked.
Heather 7:28 p.m. Oh wow.
Yep. I made this blade of death.
Toggle but clickable button start out of list button hide curve.
Next button. We look equip share. Next, our cleric, an elf named Sherry of skill 6, wielding her mace, equipped with healer's kit. Buy an enchanted mace. Craft an enchanted mace. Needs 35 smithing, 35 transmutation, and 35 alchemy. Dimmed. Craft the holy mace. Needs 35 smithing, 35 transmutation, and 50 religion. Craft the elixir of wisdom. Needs 50 alchemy and 25 divination. Dimmed. Radio.
Are you serious?
Unchecked.
I don't
4
have
of 6.
25 divination.
Find the ancient holy symbol. Needs 30 geography, 50 history, and 35 religion. Dimmed. Do something else. Radio button. Checked. 6 of 6.
God damn it!
Next, we look equip train Stuart myself. Needs fighting skill. Journey on. Next, we packed up our belongings and left the tavern. I was nervous at first, afraid he had found out that I knew about Princess Emily's escape 9 years ago. When I arrived, I learned that wasn't the case at all. The king met with me in his private chambers, just the two of us. His eyes had an intensity to them that was unnerving. I found the king very attractive, so I flirted with him. Needs 40 personality. Dim. I met him formally as my king. Radio. Next button. The king sat in his chair and passed me a goblet of wine. I took it and waited to hear why he had called me here. He then started to explain, very frankly, that Queen Janice would not give him an heir. He explained that he wanted me to use magic to help her carry his baby. I asked why he didn't go to Freelden, and he said that he had, but the old wizard was a traditionalist and had never studied the healing magics needed. I had just the required healing spell, and I agreed to perform the task. Needs 25 healing. Radio button. Checked. 1 of 4. I could use my necromancy to bolster the child's life source until it was born. Needs 25 necromancy. Radio button. Unchecked. 2 of 4.
Jesus. Well then. Jesus Christ.
I didn't know any magic that would help, but I promised to look into it. Radio
Post a comment out of
unchecked.
list click toggle
3
button.
of 4.
Heather 7:31 p.m. Do something else.
Okay, so I can either do healing or I can bolster the unborn child's lifespan. Okay. Well then. God. Jesus Christ. Well then, yep. God. Okay, this is a dilemma of a choice. I shall be back. I need to go to the bathroom real quick. That's a choice right there. That's great.
Toggle button. Click button. Start. Heather 7:33 p.m. Go with the first choice. Toggle click buttons. Out of list button.
You want me to take the good route, huh? Okay.
Timer refused to help him. Radio
Oh.
unchecked 4 of 4.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that.
I had just a required healing spell, and I agreed to perform the task. Needs 25 healing. Radio button checked 1 of 4. Next. My knowledge of healing magic was proving to be very useful. Healing plus 15, Royal Faction plus 10.
Okay, that's 40 healing now.
The next day, I was taken to Queen Janet herself. She hardly spoke to me as I set up the magic I would need to help her carry a baby to term. Once everything was in place, I began to cast. The magic worked flawlessly as it flowed directly into the Queen. It worked so well that I was confident she would become pregnant immediately and have a baby in 9 months. The King and Queen thanked me for my services. It was somewhat odd, since they had no proof that my magic had done the deed. 9 months later, the Queen had a little boy, Prince Eric, the new heir to the throne. A few months after Prince Eric was born, Princess Emily and her small family moved back into the royal castle. Now that the king had an heir of his own, the princess and her son were no longer in danger. The people of the kingdom were very happy, and everyone hoped that the 2 princes and the renewal of the royal family would mean that the troubled days were over. They were all wrong, of course. Things got even worse. Nearly a year later, I was called to King Garrett's private room and given my reward in secret. Nobody knew that I was the one responsible for the Queen's ability to have a baby. Gold plus 300, Royal Faction plus 15.
Okay, there we go. Got some gold.
A stocky dwarf came into the Full Cup Inn and hired us a few months later.
Hello, Dwarfy.
He said that his brethren under the Grey Mountains had tunneled too deep and had awoken something ancient and evil. It was an old tale, almost a cliche, but there it was. It was starting to get ridiculous. After all these years, my party still wasn't mounted. I finally bought horses for my 3 companions. Needs 210 gold.
There we
Radio,
go.
but it was about I summoned horse. We had no choice. Next, they were very happy to have horses of their own. We got to see a lot of the country as we went, and Dash, my warhorse, was happy to be moving at a decent speed. Gold minus 210, geography plus 10.
Okay, there we go. I might be able to... fuck. Don't have it. Ah, son of a... It's fine. I'll deal with that later.
We arrived at the foothills of the Grey Mountains in the late fall of that year. I was worried about the weather, afraid that one good snowfall might trap us for the entire winter, but we ventured forward anyway. Our dwarf guide led us through a grand arch and deep into the mountain. Welcome, the dwarf chief said in a deep voice as he smiled at us through his thick beard. We have no time to waste. The blasted monster has stopped all mining and production. He gave us maps to follow through the mine shafts to where they had encountered the beast. We spent the night in the dwarven halls and left the very next day. My divination magic led us there unerringly. Needs 35 divination, radio button, checked, 1 of 4. I knew a little about underground phenomena. Needs 40 nature, radio button, unchecked, 2 of 4.
Ooh.
Although the map was subterranean, the principles were the same. Needs 30 geography, dimmed. We got miserably lost. I knew a little about underground phenomena. Needs 40 nature, radio button, unchecked, 2. Although I knew a little. Next, the map was difficult to use, but with my knowledge of stalactites and stalagmites, I led the party to our goal. Geography plus 5, nature plus 10.
Yes. There we go. 5 more geography, 10 more nature. There we go. Got 50 nature.
The mine shaft had indeed broken into a much older tunnel. The dead bodies of dwarves could be seen scattered all about. The monster had killed a great number of them. We proceeded forward cautiously, but didn't have to go far before we found it. It stood an easy 15 feet tall, had large horns in its head, and thick leathery skin all over its body. Its eyes seemed to have flames dancing in them as it approached us, ready for the kill. I battled the creature with my strongest fireballs. Needs 40 conjuration, dimmed. I summoned the demon to fight for us. Needs 30 summoning, dim. I hid a vast canyon under an illusion. Needs 35 illusion, dimmed. I had read about such a beast, and I knew its limitations. Needs 35 history, dim, Stewart charged the beast. Needs fighter power 6, radio button, checked, 5 of 6. We had no choice but to run away, returning to the dwarf chief, radio button, unchecked, next, button. It was an epic battle as the fighter and the monster fought blade versus tooth. I sent a few small pieces of magic into the fray, but I had to be careful not to distract Stewart. In the end, the beast was killed. Fighting +5, Warcraft +5.
And that's 100 fighting. Okay.
Post a comment, edit out of list, click toggle button, Heather 7:43 p.m. finally getting her skills up. Yay.
Sort of. Slowly but surely.
Button, click talk, could have parked him away from the fight. Heather 7:42 p.m. finally I would have bought horses earlier rather than getting that war horse. You could have parked him away from the fighting.
Well, you know.
Heather button, click toggle, Heather 7:33 p.m. go with the first talk, click, head, talk, click, but head, toggle, but click, but out of list button, hide current comment.
Through the tunnels, eventually finding our way back to the dwarven Great Hall. The dwarf chief himself met us. He was overwhelmed with joy at our success. He hugged each of us with his thick arms, laughing as he did so. Wonderful, he exclaimed. We will be telling your tale for years to come. The dwarves held a great feast in our honor. They were very pleased to give us a substantial reward. I accepted the reward, radio. I demanded that they give us more. I declined the reward. Next, but the dwarves handed over a great sum of money to us. Dwarf faction +15, gold +1250, fame +1.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about. 1250 gold. Yeah, give me that money.
We left the dwarven kingdom and headed to Tornasa. The next summer proved to be very dry and hot, and all across Dario farmers were having trouble with their crops. It wasn't a full-fledged drought or famine, but it was a difficult year. A few towns and villages were hit worse than others, including my home village. I heard about their troubles from the letter I received from the mayor. It wasn't one of our regular jobs, but I took it anyway. Dash was happy to be moving, and so were the other mounts and the rest of my party were riding. It was an enjoyable ride as we traveled back to my home village. Geography +3.
Yay, 3 geography.
Elmvale was much smaller than I had remembered it. I had seen many great things since I had been there last. The beautiful river that ran through my village was all dried up. Sherry was just as happy as I was to return to our home village. We were given a room in the local tavern. We sat down with the mayor later that night to talk business. He said that the temple had used up all of their funds to help pay for food, but it wasn't going to be enough. I brewed many potions which would allow the crops to grow with very little water. Needs 30 alchemy, radio button, checked, 1 of 5.
Yes.
I conjured a rain shower. Needs 30 conjuration, dim. I summoned many water elementals. Needs 25 summoning, dim. I created a fake rain shower and fake healthy plants. Needs 25 illusion, dimmed. I didn't do anything to help my village, radio, next, but it wasn't very glamorous as far as magic goes, but it was effective. I brewed many of these potions, which were then sprayed across the crops. The plants didn't need to be watered again, and the magic made them grow to their full size in the dry, cracked soil. Alchemy +10, agriculture +20.
There we go. Starting to build up that agriculture and getting the alchemy up. Okay, there we go. There we go. There we go.
My entire village was overjoyed. They would not starve to death or go into great debt from importing food from other towns. I was a local hero, and word of my deeds spread across the land. The mayor even offered me a small reward of 200 gold. I took the gold. I asked for more money. I turned down the reward. Next, it was a generous reward, considering that I hadn't even asked to be paid. I accepted the money. Gold +200, fame +1. My party and I packed our bags and left my small village. I was 32 years old when the great dragon Parnixus renewed his terrible wrath upon the land. King Garrett's reign was tearing the kingdom apart, and the dragon was decimating what was left. The Fighters Guild did very well through these years, gaining many contracts to defend villagers and merchants from the mighty beast. Stewart, a dues-paying member of the guild, was approached by the guild leader for a lucrative contract. Our fighter wasn't hired away from our party. Instead, the entire party was offered a job. The guild hall in Tornassa had grown rich from the fear Parnixus was instilling in the land, even though the fighters who were hired out could do little against the mighty beast. The guild leader brought the entire party into his office and told us what he needed. A mighty wizard had hired the fighters guild to protect him against Parnixus. The guild sent a dozen fighters, but when the dragon attacked his tower, all 12 fighters were killed and the tower was laid to waste. The contract was fulfilled. The fighters had fought to the best of their abilities, but the mage refused to pay. The Meg Guild refused to get involved. We were to speak to the mage and get the 1,000 gold that was owed to the Fighters Guild. We looked over our equipment and trained in our skills before we left.
Okay, time to see if I can do any more equipment.
Post a comment outlet, click top, a way to have them read automatic. Heather 7:47 p.m. move. No wonder you don't usually read comments on screen. I was thinking there might.
There is, but honestly, this is a little bit more easier for me.
Buttons, click top, Heather 7:43 p.m. Finally getting her top, click, but a way to have them read automatically. Toggle, click, but out, post a out of edit button, hide current comment.
45 per 50% equip Stewart, the fighter, read, equip Marys, equip Sherry, train Stewart myself, train Marys myself, train Sherry myself, journey next, our fighter, equipped with the legendary gauntlets of strength. Give the ring of courage to Stu, craft the helm of battle insight. Needs 50 divination, 25 transmutation, and 15 gold, dimmed. Do something else, do something. Check, next, button. We look, equip Mary.
Oh, come on.
Next, our Biamin, craft an enchanted damper. Needs 25 smithing and 50 transmutation, dim. Craft the damper of sharpness. Needs 50 smithing and 60 transmutation, dim. Craft the boots of silence. Needs 25 illusion, 25 transmutation, and 8 gold, dim. Craft the cloak of shadows. Needs 45 illusion, 25 transmutation, and 15 gold, dim. Craft the collection of poisons. Needs 45 alchemy and 50 nature. Radio button, unchecked, 6 of 7.
Yay!
Checked. Do something else. Next, it took a combination of my alchemy skills and herbalism from my knowledge of nature, but when I was finished I had crafted a collection of poisons the likes of which the world had never seen. Mary's was quite eager to start trying them out. We looked over our equip Sherry. Check. Next, our cleric, an elf named Sherry of skill 6, wield, equipped with the legendary healer's kit. Buy an enchanted mace, craft an enchanted mace. Needs 35 smithing, 35 transmutation, and 35 alchemy, dimmed. Craft the holy mace. Needs 35 smithing, 35 transmutation, and 50 religion, dimmed. Radio. Craft the elixir of wisdom. Needs 50 alchemy and 25 divination, dimmed. Radio button, unchecked, 4 of 6. Find the ancient holy symbol. Needs 30 geography, 50 history, and 35 religion, dimmed. Do something else. Checked. Next, we looked over equip Stewart, the equip Marys, the thief, equip train, journey onward.
Post it out of it list, click toggle, Heather 7:49 p.m. Hey, whatever works for you.
Why is this making my life so fucking hard? God damn it. Well, I almost had enough alchemy to do that, but no.
Next, we packed up our belongings and left the tavern. The wizard was living in a tent outside the ruins of his tower. It wasn't very far from Tornassa, so we walked. Parnaxis had really decimated the poor man's residence. Bricks, broken equipment, and scattered herbs lay everywhere. Why should I pay the guild for their failure? The wizard reasoned. And even if I wanted to, I can't. Everything I owned was in my tower, and it's in shambles. We took the simple solution and paid 1,000 gold ourselves. Needs 1,000 gold. Radio. I explained to the Fighters Guild that since the dragon had destroyed the tower, they were owed nothing. Needs 40 personality. Dimmed. I used my magic to make the mage pay his debt. Needs 35 enchantment. Radio button. Unchecked. 3 of 4. Check. I I spoke to the wizard. Radio button. Next, Buck. He did it with a smile, handing over the money as though it had been his idea all along. Enchantment plus 10.
There we go. More enchantment. There we go.
I looked at the 1,000 gold in my hands. I gave the Fighters Guild the gold that they were owed. Radio, I kept the money. Next button. The Fighters Guild was very happy that I had successfully completed the job and that they had their money. They paid me my 20% commission. Gold plus 200, Fighters Guild plus 20, fame plus 1. Thank you, friend, the wizard said, happy to be free of the Fighters Guild. Please, take this gift as a thank you from me to you.
Ooh, gift.
He gave me a special staff. Radio button. Checked. 1 of 2. He offered me magical training. Radio button. Checked.
Oh, the staff for the training. Oof.
Toggle button. Heather 74. Talk click but Heather 7:52 p.m. IVE gotta be up here by, so I'll have to leave now. Have a good rest of stream.
Have fun, Heather.
Toggle click button star comp out of list button hide current.
Training or the staff.
He offered me magical training. Radio button. Check. Next. He knew a lot of spells that I hadn't seen before, and I was happy to learn from him. Illusion plus 5. Conjuration plus 5. Divination plus 5. Enchantment plus 5. Summoning plus 5. Transmutation plus 5.
There we go.
I remember the historic day when the entire kingdom shook from an enormous earthquake, even though it wasn't until weeks later that the results were known. A small village named Scone, in southern Daria, had suddenly started being attacked from within. Their temple had begun to spew forth all manner of foul beasts. Many adventuring parties took it upon themselves to investigate the tunnels below. This vast dungeon soon became known as the Abyss. We didn't try our luck until nearly halfway into our adventuring career, many years after the monsters had appeared. We didn't want to be just another party of adventurers defeated deep beneath the ground. We decided that the time was right for our party to test its skills against the Great Dungeon. The only other challenge that took every member of my party skill into account was when we met Pardixus, but that didn't happen until much later. Dash was happy to be moving, and so were the other mounts that the rest of my party were riding. It was a nice ride as we traveled to the small village of Scone. Geography plus 3. We witnessed the tail end of a terrible massacre when we arrived in Scone. There were at least 5 people dead, but they had captured the culprit alive. To my chagrin, I realized that it was a troll, like myself. The warriors who had captured it looked at me with suspicion, but my clothing and mannerisms made them leave me alone. The troll lay at their feet, wrapped securely in chains while its wounds regenerated before our eyes. I tried to speak to the troll. Radio. I left the area quickly. Next, Buck. It was the first time I had ever seen another troll, besides my parents. The warriors who had captured it stood nearby, but they let me approach. It was enormous, green, and covered with warts. But that was where our similarities ended. It stunk, its teeth were rotten, and it continually tried to claw or bite anyone who got too close. I tried to speak to it, but it only knew a few words and preferred to sling crude insults at me instead. Sadly, I left the troll behind and continued on my way, realizing once more just how different I really was. Nature plus 10, fighting plus 10, healing plus 10.
More nature. Yeah.
The village of Scone had made the best of a bad situation. Over the years, they had built a thriving community around the Abyss. Weaponsmiths, inns, taverns, and general stores catered to the adventurers. They purchased the loot that came from the dungeon and sold new equipment to parties who needed things. My race didn't prove to be a problem. Stories of a droll mage had reached the small village. We looked over our equipment and trained, equipped stewards, equipped Marys, equipped next, our equipped with the legendary gauntlets of strength, give the ring, craft the helm of battle insight. Needs 50 divination, 25 transmutation, and 15 gold, dimmed. Do something else. Next, we look equip Mary. Check. Journey next, our thief, equipped with the legendary poison collection. Buy an enchanted, craft an enchanted dagger. Needs 25 smithing and 50 transmutation, dimmed. Craft the dagger of sharpness. Needs 50 smithing and 60 transmutation, craft the boots of silence. Needs 25 illusion. 25 transmutation, and 8 gold. Radio button, unchecked. Forest, checked. Craft the cloak of shadows. Needs 45 illusion, 25 transmutation, and 15 gold. Dim. Do something. Next, I purchased a pair of really nice boots. I then cast the transmutation spell upon them, followed by an illusion spell that was designed to eliminate any noise. The results were great. Mary's now had a pair of boots of silence. Gold -8. We looked over it. Equip Sherry. Next, our cleric, equipped with the healer's kit, buy an craft an enchanted mace. Needs 35 smithing, 35 transmutation, and 35 alchemy. Radio button, unchecked. 2. Checked. Craft the holy mace. Needs 35 smithing, 35 transmutation, and 50 religion. Dim. Craft the elixir of wisdom. Needs 50 alchemy and 25 divination. Dimmed. Radio button. Find the ancient holy symbol. Needs 30 geography, 50 history, and 35 religion. Dim. Do something. Next, I had to use several alchemical processes to get the metal right, but once I did, I Smith had a powerful enchanted mace for Sherry to use. We looked over our equipment and trained in our skills before we left. Equip Stuart, equip Mary's, equip Sherry, train Stuart myself. Needs fighting skill. Train Mary, train Stuart train Mary's myself. Needs thievery skill. Dim. Train Sherry myself. Needs healing skill. Dimmed. Journey. Next, we trained for many hours. I was able to teach Stuart a few things. We looked over our equipment. Equip Stuart. Equip Sherry. Train Sherry. Journey. Next. Journey. Train Mary. Equip Sherry. The cleric. Radio. Journey on. Next, we packed up our belongings and left the tavern. We entered the great abyss through the front temple doors. At first, we didn't see anything besides broken pews and the old altar. We cautiously made our way forward to the catacombs beneath. So far, it didn't seem very dangerous. But everyone knew that the deeper an intrepid adventurer went, the stronger the danger and greater the reward. We were broken from our thoughts by the sound of a group of skeletons approaching. I let Sherry handle it. Needs cleric power 6. Radio. We turned around and leapt. Next, Buck, turning undead and healing injuries. That was the entire reason we had a cleric in our crew. Sherry was eager to call to her gods and smite the skeletons. They collapsed almost immediately. Mary's was quick to go through the bone fragments for treasure. It was grisly work, looting the undead corpses, but we found many valuables. After we had finished taking everything of value, we continued deeper into the abyss. Gold plus 135, healing plus 5, religion plus 5. The catacombs had very little dust or spider webs on them, which wasn't really surprising considering how many adventurers passed through every day. We found a rickety old wooden staircase and descended down into the abyss. The wood looked old and ancient, and we hadn't gotten very far when something happened. Mary's found a trap. Needs thief power 6. Dimmed. We tripped a trap, ending our journey into the abyss. Our thief had failed us. Radio button, checked, 2 of 2. Next, we were very lucky to have survived. The poison dart struck us all, but we crawled out of the catacombs and returned to Scone, where we received swift medical attention. We gained no fame that day, but at least we could tell our future clients that we had entered the great abyss near Scone. I really enjoyed working with Sherry. We were very close during my adventuring days. I ended up marrying my girlfriend, Sherry. Radio button. We never got married. I decided to break up with Sherry and next, I was madly in love with Sherry. I had a good paying job, and I was an adult. It only seemed natural to get married. I was thrilled when Sherry said yes. We had no problem with a same-sex marriage, and neither did the rest of my party. We had a wonderful wedding and went on a great honeymoon. Religion plus 10. We rented a cabin in the woods. Needs 20 gold. Radio button. We visited many famous battlegrounds across Daria. Needs 35 gold. Radio button. We stayed in a vineyard for a few days. We traveled across Daria, just seeing the sights. We completed a great pilgrimage together. Radio button. Unchecked. 5 of 6. We never left my route. Next, but we traveled the road of spirits, visiting many famous shrines and temples across Daria. It was difficult at times, but we persevered. It was a holy and sacred experience which brought us closer together, both spiritually and physically. Religion plus 25. Even though I was now married, things returned to normal fairly quickly. Considering the fact that we were already living together at the Full Cup Inn, our wedding didn't change very much. The years continued to pile up behind me. I knew that wizards were supposed to be old, but as time wore on, I began to fit the mold. My mystical knowledge continued to grow with me. I continued my studies as a necromancer. Current skill, 78. I decided to focus on conjuration. I continued to study a little bit of it. Check. Next, I was content to keep my magical education well-rounded. Alchemy plus 3, conjuration plus 3, divination plus 3, enchantment plus 3, healing plus 3, illusion plus 3, necromancy plus 3, summoning plus 3, transmutation plus 3. I was also careful to continue to study other things as well. I studied Arcana. Arcana, 36. I studied agriculture. Agriculture, 23. I studied diplomacy. Diplomacy, 63. I studied economics. Economics, 8. I studied fighting. Fighting, 100. I studied geography. Geography, 34. Radio button, unchecked, 6 of 12. I studied history. History, 3. Radio button, unchecked, 7 of 12. I studied nature. Nature, 62. I studied religion. Religion, 48. Radio. I studied smithing. Smithing, 58. I studied thievery. Thievery, 10. I studied warcraft. Next button. I studied every day, learning even more about thievery. Thievery plus 25. I wasn't the only one who used their spare time to improve their skills. All of my companions continued to train and practice. Although Stuart improved the most, dimmed. Mary's improved the most, Sherry improved the most, next. Mary's worked really hard at training and practicing, and her skills really improved. I was 40 years old when Queen Janice died. King Gareth seemed not to care at all. At least, that was the public opinion on the matter. Terrible rumors even circulated that he had something to do with the Queen's death. Their nephew, Prince Travis, was 19 years old. Luckily for him and his mother, Princess Emily, Prince Eric was alive and healthy. Since he was the uncontested heir to the throne, Prince Travis and his family were safe. The kingdom of Daria was in a terrible mess, as everything seemed to be falling apart. It was no wonder that the orcs decided to launch a major offensive upon seeing that Daria was so weak. The white-bearded wizard, Frolden himself, came to me requesting help. "It's good to see you again, Morgana," he said, treating me like an equal as he leaned on his wizardly staff. "I need you and your companions to bring a treaty to the orc chieftain. It has many concessions in it, but it's fair and it should stop the orcs from invading." It was a sad time for the kingdom of Daria, but we really had no choice. We weren't prepared for war, and the advantages that the treaty would give the orcs was the only way to stop an invasion. I accepted the task. Radio. I turned down the task. Next button. "Your service to the kingdom won't go unnoticed," the kindly wizard said with a smile. Dash was happy to be moving, and so were the other mounts the rest of my party was riding. It was a terrifying journey into the far west and orc territory. Geography plus 3. We left the kingdom of Daria behind as we traveled toward the west and into orc territory, far beyond the safety of human land. I was nervous to be traveling in such dangerous territory, but I was also eager to see the barbaric culture. It was interesting to me that the kingdom still wanted peace with the orcs after all they had done. Memories of the orc raid on my village all those years ago were still vivid and detailed in my mind. We were deep into the wilderness when we stumbled upon something entirely different. The trees had become older and older with each step, and the forest was teeming with wildlife. We were far from the orc homeland still, but as we passed through a circle of mushrooms, we began to see strange things. Little people, similar to elves but much smaller, danced all around us. One of them came forward and asked for aid. She wore a tiny little dress, and her diminutive shoes were pointed. She said that a monster had attacked their forest home. We went to check it out. The creature was enormous, larger than any boar I'd ever heard of. It looked badly diseased, its eyes were bleeding and its fur all matted with filth. I would have guessed that it was undead, a zombie of some type, but my arcane skills told me that no necromancy was involved. It was corrupted and far from natural, and my best guess was that it was the result of some magical experiment. The moment it saw us, it charged. Stuart defended us well. Needs fighter power 6, radio button. I shot a spark of fire towards the creature. Needs 45 conjuration, dim. I sidestepped the creature without looking up. Needs 45 divination, radio button, unchecked, 3 of 6. Check, shadow, my dog, attack the boar, radio, Cherry saved the day. Needs cleric power 6, radio, we were lucky to get away with that. Next, button, I was looking down at the ground as the creature charged toward me, and I saw it in my mind's eye, allowing me to sidestep at the last second. The boar crashed into a tree instead of tearing me to pieces. Divination plus 10. The corrupted beast roared in pain, but the fight wasn't over yet. It charged again, this time directly at me. I bathed the creature in fire. Needs 50 conjuration, dim. I turned the creature into stone. Needs 35 transmutation, radio button, checked, 2 of 6. I reacted physically, forgetting to use my magic. Needs 50 fighting, I drained the creature of its life force. Needs 50 necromancy, I healed the beast. Needs 40 healing, radio button, unchecked, 5 of 6. Check, I bathed the creature, I turned the creature, checked, next, my transmutation magic caught the boar in the chest, causing the abomination to stagger as its dirty fur turned into stone. It fell forward onto its front paws, twisting and writhing as it froze into place, becoming a terrifying statue. Transmutation plus 10. The Fey creatures were very happy with us. The evil creature was gone, and they were safe. There had to be 1,000 of them living there, and not all of them were small. I saw nymphs, dryads, pixies, brownies, and many other types of nature's creatures. The small Fey fairies who had requested our aid came forward with a reward. I was presented with a bundle of herbs and plants that could make the most deadly poisons. Radio button, checked, 1 of 3. I was presented with a bundle of herbs and plants that could make the most beneficial cures. I told them that no reward was necessary. Radio button, unchecked, 3 of 3. Next button. I graciously accepted the poison collection, watching as Mary's eyed the bundle with curiosity. It would complement her skills well. Gain poison collection. The community of Fae gathered around me. I could feel that they were very curious about me. I knew that something special was occurring. I had the opportunity to become a druid. I became a druid. Needs 80 nature and neutral alignment, dimmed. I declined the offer. Next, but I was happy to have helped, but I had my own destiny in mind. I turned down the offer to become a druid and continued onward toward the ordination. Even though I didn't become a druid, I still learned a lot from the Fey creatures. Nature plus 15. We arrived at the Great Orc City. It wasn't really a city, but more of a collection of orc tribes. They had built houses and wooden enclosures that stretched across the wilderness. They were a rough species, but they allowed us to pass with only a few bad words and dirty looks. We stopped at an inn to rest before presenting ourselves to the orc chieftain. You must be the great wizard I heard about, the orc chieftain said to me when we arrived. I gave him the peace treaty that Freelden had given us. You will stay with us and bring back my reply. The enormous orc warrior waved to his attendants, who led us to a tent for us to stay in. It was during this time that I learned more about orc culture. They were cruel at times, but they were also intensely loyal to those they respected. I learned that they had a very strong sense of honor and unwavering morals. I watched as they tended their warg packs, teaching their young to ride the enormous wolf-like creatures. They were harsh with the ones that fell, but I saw pride and confidence grow upon their young faces once they had finally mastered the skill. I was surprised when I was invited to try my luck at riding one of the beasts. The large gray orb looked at me with intelligence in its eyes. I got on and found that it was much faster than a horse. I imagined that it would also be extremely vicious in a fight. Keep it, a gruff voice said. I was surprised to see the orc chieftain watching from across the pen. He turned away without saying any more. I accepted the mount. I turned down next, but they made me a custom saddle for my work and taught me how to ride it. I named it Tagdock, Zolgak, Radio Button, Krishner, Kodog, something next, but I continued to watch the orcs practice with their works as I waited for the orc chieftain to put together his reply to the treaty. I thought about that night so long ago when they had raided my village. I poisoned the entire pack. I forgave the orcs for their brutish nature. Radio button. Next button. I felt more at peace afterward. They were violent and harsh, but they had many redeeming qualities as well. Orc faction plus 50, good plus 3. A few weeks later, I was called back into the orc chieftain's tent. He seemed very unsure of himself, obviously enjoying the concessions made in the treaty, but also wanting to continue with the invasion. I smoothed over any last uncertainties, paving the way for peace. Needs 40 diplomacy, radio button, check. I talked him into signing it. Needs 40 personality, dim. I planted a magical suggestion in his mind to sign it. Needs 40 enchantment, radio button, unchecked, 3 of 4. I waited for him to make up his mind, radio, next, but the treaty was already pretty sweet for the orcs, so it wasn't too difficult for me to show them just how good it was. The chieftain signed the papers happily before sending me on my way. Diplomacy plus 10, orc faction plus 15. Fralden seemed tired and sad when we returned. He leaned heavily upon his old staff, and his eyes had bags under them. He was happy that the treaty had been accepted, but he knew that the concessions would weaken Arya even more. He gave us our reward for a job well done. Fame plus 1, gold plus 175. I was reading an old dusty tome when I had a surprise visitor at the Full Cup Inn. Good morning, Morgana. I'm glad to see that you've continued to work on your magic. It was Master Durgan, the doorkeeper of the academy. I hadn't seen him in a long time, but he hardly seemed to have changed at all. He greeted me warmly as though the many years since my graduation didn't exist. I'm afraid this isn't a social call, he said, bowing his bald head. We need your help. We looked over our equipment and trained in our skills before we left. Equip Stewards, equip Marys, next, but our equipped with the legend gauntlets of strength, give the ring of craft the helm of battle insight. Needs 50 divination, 25 transmutation, and 15 gold. Radio button, unchecked, 2 of 3. Checked. Do something else. Next, I purchased a sturdy helm of good quality and cast a spell of transmutation on it. After that, I cast a powerful divination spell into the Leaf of Magic. The result was excellent. I had crafted the Helm of Battle Insight. It would become a piece of history in ages to come, and Stuart was eager to be the first to use it. Gold minus 15. We looked up equipped Stuarts, equipped Marys, equipped next. Our feet equipped boots of poison collection by an craft an enchanted dagger. Needs 25 smithing and 50 transmutation. Radio button, unchecked. Craft a dagger of sharpness. Needs 50 smithing and 60 transmutation. Dimmed. Craft and check. Craft the cloak of shadows. Needs 45 illusion, 25 transmutation, and 15 gold. Dimmed. Give the poison collection to Mary's. Do something up next. The weapon I crafted with my smithing skills was very sharp, but once I placed the transmutation spell upon it, it became even sharper. Mary's looked forward to sticking the enchanted dagger into someone's back.
Jeez.
We looked up equip Sherry. Train Mary's myself. Needs thievery skill. Dimmed. Train Sherry myself. Needs healing skill. Dimmed. Next, our cleric, an elf named Sherry of skill 7, wielding her enchanted mace, equipped with the legend healer's kit. Craft the holy mace. Needs 35 smithing, 35 transmutation, and 50 religion. Dimmed. Radio button.
No, I'm not good at religion. Yeah, son of a bitch.
Craft the elixir of wisdom. Needs 50 alchemy and 25 divination. Radio button. Checked. 2 of 4.
But I can do that. Okay.
Find the ancient holy symbol. Needs 30 geography, 50 history, and 35 religion. Dimmed. Do something. Next. I brewed the powerful elixir of wisdom using some very powerful magic. The moment Cherry drank it, amazing words of insight came from her mouth. We looked over our equipped Stuart, the fighter, train journey onward. Next, we packed up our belongings and left the tavern. I could feel the wrongness the instant we arrived at the academy. Archmage Luscious took ill a few weeks before the incidents began, Master Durgan explained. What incidents? I asked. Instead of telling me, he showed me. He muttered the magic words and waved his hands in intricate mystical designs. I recognized a simple spell and knew that it should have created a small ball of light. Instead of creating a soft illumination, it changed into something completely different. The very fabric of reality was torn in front of me, and a sharp-toothed demon stepped forth. Master Durgan was ready for it and cracked its head open with his staff. This is happening with any spell cast near the academy, Master Durgan explained. They change into a summoning spell. The greater the magic, the greater the demon summon. The first summonings had been particularly destructive since the mages had tried to defend themselves with magic, which only made things worse. I asked to see Archmage Luscious, Radio. I experimented by casting various spells, Radio. I went immediately to the large academy library and began researching, Radio. I apologized to. I experimented by casting. Next, each spell I cast was instantly turned into a summoning spell. I was careful to use only low-level magic since the summoning was proportional to the magic used. Stuart was kept busy dispatching each demon that was inadvertently summoned. I decided to cast a very powerful summoning spell in hopes of tracking the disruption to its source. Needs 40 summoning. Dimmed. I left the academy to cast a divination spell. Needs 35 divination. Radio button. Checked. 2 of 3. My next, but it worked well. My magical sight wavered before my eyes, and soon I saw a golden apple in one of the master's rooms. I returned to the academy and went to the room that I'd seen in my vision. Divination plus 15. I opened the door to the master's room and saw the golden apple of discord sitting on the bed. There was no question that it was this artifact that was causing all of our troubles. I smashed the apple against the wall. Radio button. Check. I blackmailed Master Durgan, demanding a large reward for the solution to his problem. I hid the apple somewhere even better, knowing that it would bring down the academy. Radio. Next. Button. The apple struck the wall, and time seemed to distort. The pieces fell slowly to the ground, glowing as they drifted through the air. I watched as the shards slowly lost their glow and realized immediately that the curse had been lifted. May Guild plus 10. The door to the room opened, and the owner of the apple walked in. I recognized Master Bellin, although he had never taught me during my time at the academy. What is the meaning of this? He exclaimed. I destroyed your artifact, I informed him bluntly. Why did you do it? Master Bellin gave a deep sigh before he spoke. The academy is corrupt. I should be Archmage, but instead they picked Luscious. It's ridiculous. He has no vision and avoids making the decisions that could make the academy a place of legend. So yes, I poisoned the fool and activated the apple of discord. Once the academy was in ruins, I was going to come to the rescue and rename the new Archmage. I attempted to take him to Master Durgan, Radio. I decided to blackmail him and I let him go. Next, but did you really think I would tell you my plans and let you take me alive? The words of his spell tumbled quickly from his lips and sparks danced between his fingers. The lightning arced out, and I felt myself falling to the floor as the electricity washed over me. I cast my own lightning right back at him. Needs 60 conjuration. Dim. I forced him to stop attacking. Needs 50 enchantment. Radio button. Checked. 2 of 4. I forced myself to stay conscious. Needs 35 willpower or 40 body. Radio button. I woke up in the academy. Next, but using an enchantment on another wizard was difficult, but I was very skilled. He stopped his spell and stood quietly, waiting for my next command. Enchantment plus 10. I took him to Master Durgan, who had finally managed to revive Archmage Luscious, who had been poisoned. They were overjoyed that I had found the source of their problems and rectified the situation. You saved the academy, Master Lusha said solemnly. I told you that this one was special, Master Durgan said with a friendly smile. They took Master Balin into custody and sent out criers to let the academy know that the magical siege of their spells was over. Archmage Luscious put his arm around me and smiled happily. He told me that I would make a great archmage someday. It was a real honor. They noticed that I didn't have a wizardly staff of my own, so they gave me one. It was made from solid oak and felt very good in my hands. They also gave me a wonderful present. It was a tome of ancient magic, detailing many glyphs, runes, and ley lines. I knew that it must have come from the Archmage's personal library. I thanked them and went on my way. Arcana plus 25, Fame plus 1, Meg Guild plus 30, Gain Wizard Staff. I remember when a finely dressed human came into the full coven to hire us for a specific job. I am Thaddeus Burmount, the dandy said. I have spent a lot of money to purchase the location of a powerfully enchanted weapon. My offer is simple. I give you the location, you get to me the weapon and keep all of the other treasure. It was an excellent proposal, so I took the deal. We had an enjoyable ride. Zolkak enjoyed being outside and the horses of the other party members moved quickly. Geography plus 3. We followed the road toward the destination marked on the map, a small cove in the far east along the shores of the Silver Sea. It was somewhere around the halfway mark that a very strange thing happened. We had a nice campsite alongside the road, and it was my turn keeping watch. There was a soft, silvery glow on the edge of the campfire's light, when out stepped a miraculous creature straight from legend. At first, I thought it was a white horse, but the single horn on its forehead and fluffy white wings made me realize it was something special, a flying unicorn. I approached it, hoping to befriend it. Radio button, checked, 1 of 3. I killed it, wondering what type of treasure it would have. Radio. I watched it in awe. Radio button. Next, it walked around our campsite for a few minutes, glittering in the moonlight. When the campfire popped, it took to the air and flew away. It had been a beautiful thing to behold. Nature plus 10. We arrived at the shores of the Silver Sea, finding the location marked on the map. The X seemed to indicate an area just a few hundred meters offshore of a small town called Opal's Cove. I hired a boat to take us out there. It was very expensive. Needs 345 gold. Radio. I summoned the dolphin to carry me. Needs 40 summoning. Dim. I gave up and went home. Next, but the only boat I could find was owned by a man who charged a ridiculous fee. He knew I was stuck, so he took advantage of the situation. I had no choice, so I paid the man, and he rowed us out until we were floating over the approximate location. Gold minus 345. It just looked like a lot of water to me. I knew I needed a way to go underneath the waves and find the shipwreck. I used my magic to grow a pair of gills. Needs 35 transmutation. Radio button. I conjured air, lots of it. Needs 60 conjuration. Dim. I simply stopped breathing. Needs 45 necromancy. Radio. I used a potion of water breathing. Needs 35 alchemy. Radio button. Unchecked. I was close to the treasure, but I had no. Next, but the magic changed my neck, and before I knew it, I couldn't breathe. I panicked and fell into the water, which instantly fixed the problem as my newly formed gills were able to draw oxygen from the water. I bubbled a sigh of relief and swam down into the dark blue depths. Transmutation plus 10. It was difficult to see, but I managed. Once I reached the seafloor, I looked around for the wreckage. I had to circle outward for a few minutes until I saw some old timbers embedded in the sand and covered in seaweed. Once I found some of the debris, it was easy for me to find the rest of the shipwreck. Most of the equipment was rusted and worthless, but I found a large treasure chest in what had been the captain's room. I grabbed it and took it back up to the surface. It was a lot of work, swimming with the chest, but I did it. After I had lugged the treasure chest to shore, Mary's picked open the lock. We eagerly looked inside and were surprised to find only a single item. The legendary Sword of Death, radio button. The legendary Holy Mace, radio button. Check. The legendary Dagger of Sharpness, radio button. Unchecked, 3 of 3. Next, but I spent many restless nights on the journey back to Tornasa. The man had implied that there would be a lot of treasure for us too. Finally, we arrived home and went to the dandy's house. Gained Holy Mace. I handed over the Holy Mace. I demanded a fair reward for finding the Holy Mace. I lied to the dandy and said we didn't find the ship. Radio. Next button. I lied to the. Checked. Next, I don't know if he entirely believed us or not, but he didn't really have a choice. We kept the Holy Mace for ourselves. Evil +5.
Bitch.
One day, Sherry asked me point blank if I wanted to adopt a baby. I said yes. Radio button. Checked. 1 of 2. I said next. It was a very exciting time for us. We went to the temple and spoke to the priests. One of the clergy told us about a mother who was very sick and would likely not survive childbirth. The mother and child were human. Radio button. Checked. 1 of 7. Elves, dwarves, half-elves, radio, halfling, half-elf, half-gnomes, half-orc. Next, we waited in eager anticipation for our child to be born. I didn't know any magic that would select the sex of our unborn baby, so it was left entirely in the gods' hands. The day finally came, and it was a boy. It was a little awkward, having the baby staying with us in my room at the Full Cup Inn, but his crib fit nicely. We named our baby Liam, Cole, Quentin, Andrew, something else. Next, but those were wonderful days, hearing the laughter of a half-elf baby, but eventually I had to return to work. We hired a nanny to look after little Liam. I remember a very difficult situation between the Thieves Guild and the Fighters Guild. It started simply. A merchant needed some mercenaries to protect his stores from robbers, so he hired the Fighters Guild. The problem was, a rival merchant had hired the Thieves Guild to put him out of business. I don't know how the guild masters didn't see the problem early on, but by the time they realized what was happening, many fighters and thieves had been killed and neither guild wanted to give up their contract. The Maid Guild was soon hired by both guilds to fight the other. This troubled time became known as the Guild Wars, and I found myself in the center of it. I had been hired by the Thieves Guild. Thieves Faction, 0, radio button, check. I had been hired by the Fighters Guild. Fighters Faction, 5, radio. I had been hired by the Maid Guild. Meg's Faction, 95, radio. Check. Next button. They wanted me to settle the ridiculous contract and stop the fighters and thieves from working at cross purposes. Meg Guild +15. I followed the merchant whose shops were being raided. Radio button. Check. I followed the merchant who was responsible for raiding the shops. Radio button. Next button. My party and I were flabbergasted to discover that the two merchants were sitting in the same pub and enjoying a nice drink in front of a warm fire. They were chatting to each other like old friends. I had Mary sneak in and listen to their conversation. Needs thief power 7, radio button, checked. I used my magic to listen to their conversation from outside. Needs 55 divination, radio button. I turned myself invisible and went in to listen. Needs 55 illusion, dimmed. I set fire to the bar. I walked in and demanded to know what was going on. Next button. We waited outside until Mary's returned. Our suspicions were confirmed when Mary's told us that the merchants were intentionally pitting the guilds against each other. They knew the strife it was causing, and I soon found out their motive. One merchant sold weaponry, the other sold armor. They didn't care who was winning the guild war, because every side was buying from them, and they were becoming filthy rich. Thievery +10. I informed the guilds, radio. I demanded a cut of the action. Next button. When I informed the 3 guilds that they were being deceived, they banded together with such force that it made the entire guild war a unifying experience. They removed the 2 merchants from business, sold everything they owned, and split the profits amongst themselves. I think it was the Thieves Guild idea. I was given a nice reward for uncovering the plot. Gold +600, Fame +1, Fighters Guild +35, Thieves Guild +35, Meg Guild +35. My peak adventuring days slid by in a blur. We made a lot of money and did a lot of great things. I watched Liam grow from a baby into a child, and Sherry and I were very proud. I continued my studies as a necromancer. Current skill, 81. I decided to focus on alchemy. Alchemy. 51. I decided to focus on conjuration. I decided to focus on divination. I decided to focus on enchantment. Enchantment. 81. Radio. I decided to focus on healing. Healing. 96. Radio. I decided to focus on illusion. Illusion. 31. Radio button. Check. I decided to focus on summoning. Summoning. 27. I decided to focus on transmutation. Transmutation. 61. I continued to study next, but I saw the need to create false visions. Illusion plus 20. I also continued my other studies as well. I studied Arcana. Arcana. 61. I studied agriculture. Agriculture. 23. I studied diplomacy. Diplomacy. 73. I studied economics. Economics. 8. I studied fighting. Fighting. 100. I studied geography. Geography. 40. I studied history. History. 3. Radio. I studied nature. Nature. 87. I studied religion. Religion. 48. Checked. I studied smithing. Smithing. 58. I studied thievery. Thievery. 45. I studied warcraft. Warcraft. 43. Next button. I studied every day, learning even more about religion. Religion plus 25. I wasn't the only one who used my spare time to improve my skills. All of my companions continued to train and practice, although they all did well. Stuart improved the most. Dimmed. Mary's improved the most. Radio button. Check. Sherry improved the most. Radio button. Unchecked. Check. Nobody's. Next. Sherry worked very hard at training and practicing, and her skills really improved. It wasn't always easy, living in a room above a noisy tavern. Liam didn't know any other life, but Sherry and I often wished we had a house instead. As an adventurer, the tavern was the best place to stay in order to be close to my party and accept jobs, so we did the best we could. I remember one day when Liam was 7 years old. I hadn't been on a job for a few months, so my days were mostly filled with studying my magic. It was late one night, well past his curfew. I had heard that a man was selling an ancient tome of magic, and I was interested in hearing the price. I left the inn and saw him playing with a bunch of dirty street kids. I helped the kids' families and made sure they had enough to eat. Needs 250 gold. Radio, but I can't get the street urchins and drag Liam home. Radio. I spoke nicely to his little friends and took Liam home to bed. Radio button. Unchecked. 3 of 4. I ignored my child and went about next, but it was a lot of money, but it helped all of those families to get fresh food and clean clothes. I took Liam home after meeting all of his little friends. They were nice kids, even though they didn't have a lot of money. Unfortunately, the man with the book sold the tome to someone else. Gold minus 250, diplomacy plus 5, economics plus 10, good plus 15. I was 50 years old when my adventuring days ended. We had done many incredible things over the years, but our greatest renown came when we fought Parnixus, the great dragon. He had started stirring up recent trouble a few years ago, but his bold attacks had become even worse more recently. The royal family issued an enormous reward for the one who could drive the foul beast out of Daria for good. We finally decided to pit our might against the legendary beast. We looked over our equipment and trained in our skills before we left. Equip Stuart, the fighter. Equip Mary's. Check. Equip Trencher. Next, our thief. A human named Mary's of skill. 7. Equipped with the legendary boots of silence. Poison collection. Craft a dagger of sharpness. Needs 50 smithing and 60 transmutation. Radio button. Checked. 1 of 4. Craft the cloak of shadows. Needs 45 illusion, 25 transmutation, and 15 gold. Radio button. Unchecked. Give the poison collection. Do something. Next. First, I used my skills as a weaponsmith to craft an excellent blade. Then I cast an extremely powerful transmutation spell into the blade. It was sharp enough to cut stone when I finished. Mary's had to be careful when putting the dagger of sharpness through her bell loop. We looked over our equip Stuart, equip Mary's, equip train journey on. Next, our thief. A human named Mary's of skill. 8. Wielding her dagger of sharpness. Equipped with the legendary Boots of Silence. Poison Collection. Craft the Cloak of Shadows. Needs 45 illusion, 25 transmutation, and 15 gold. Radio button. Check. Give the poison. Do something next. But I purchased an expensive black cloak. I then cast the transmutation spell upon it, followed by a powerful illusion spell which made the wearer blend into the smallest of shadows. Mary's was very excited to wear the Cloak of Shadows, an item which would live on in history. Gold minus 15. We looked over our equipped stewards. Equip Mary's. Equip Sherry. Train Mary's myself. Needs thievery skill. Dimmed. Journey. Next. Our cleric. An elf named Sherry of skill. 9. Equipped with the legendary Elixir of Wisdom. Healer's Kit. Craft the Holy Mace. Needs 35 smithing, 35 transmutation, and 50 religion. Radio button. Checked. Give the Holy Mace to Sherry. The cleric. Radio button. Find the ancient holy symbol. Do something up. Next. Sherry was very happy to receive the powerful weapon. We looked over our equipped stewards. Equip Mary. Equip Sherry. Next. Our equipped with the legendary Elixir of Wisdom. Healer's Kit. Find the ancient holy symbol. Needs 30 geography, 50 history, and 35 religion. Dimmed. Do something else. Next. We look. Equip stewards. Equip. Next. Our fighter. A human named Steward of skill. 11. Wielding his sword of death. Equipped with the legendary Gauntlets of Strength. Helm of Battle Insight. Give the Ring of Courage. Do something else. Radio button. Next. Button. Steward placed the Ring of Courage onto his finger, and the results were immediate. It wasn't the recklessness of false bravado. The courage it instilled made every motion more confident and deadly. It was a beautiful piece of magic. We looked over our equipment and trained and equipped stewards. Equip Mary's. Equip Sherry. Train Mary. Journey. Next. Our thief. A human named Mary's of skill. 9. Wielding her dagger of sharpness. Equipped with the legendary Boots of Silence. Cloak of Shadows. Poison Collection. Give the poison collection to Mary's. Do something next. Mary's already had the poison collection that I had crafted myself. There was no sense in keeping both, so we sold one of them. Gold plus 700.
Okay. Well, that just happened.
We looked over our equip Sherry. Train Mary's myself. Mary's go. We journey onward. Read. Check. Next. But we packed up our belongings and left the tavern. We had the support of the entire nation behind us. Needs 13 fame. Dimmed. Read. We hadn't become as famous as we had wanted, so we were given no aid. Radio button. Checked. 2 of 2. Next. Steward led us forward, followed by Sherry, then Mary's and myself at the end. Liam was there to see us off, cheering with the excitement that only an 8-year-old could muster. I drifted over to Sherry and took her hand. We climbed onto our mounts and left Tornassa. This was the largest quest we had ever undertaken, and we knew that it would be a defining moment in our lives. Request aid from the good gods themselves. Needs 100 good. Dimmed. Request aid from the evil gods themselves. Needs 100 evil. Dimmed. Pray to the gods for their blessing. Radio but pray to no one. Next. But Sherry assured me that the gods were always listening, and I suppose our prayers didn't do any harm. Religion plus 15. Any child could tell you where Parnassus lived. His mountain lair was legendary and mentioned in every bardic tale about him. It was rumored to be filled with the treasure of all those who had failed to slay him. We went straight to the mountain, ready to bring down the beast. We paused for a few moments, looking up at the smoke drifting out of the cave at the summit. A mighty roar from above told us that Parnassus knew we were coming.
Do I have to get back to you? Okay.
Cherry assured me that the gods were always listening. Religion plus 15.
Post a comment, out, list, clickable button, toggle button, Daniel Berry officially Rams 2022 champs 8:10 missive. Button start, clickable but toggle button, Heather 755, top click, Daniel Berry officially Rams 2022 champs 8:10 missive.
Hi. What's up?
Toggle button, not clickable button, comment action, button start comment, out of list button, hide current comment.
If you're still here, Daniel, how's it going?
Handwriting, speaking rate, 666
Hi, Heather.
I dismounted from my Wurzel bag and took a deep breath before nodding to the others. We began to climb the steep slope up to Parnix's lair. The attack from Parnix's happened the instant we stepped into
Post a
his
comment,
lair.
edit, out of list with clickable button, comment act, toggle button, not Daniel Berry officially Rams 2020, button start, clickable but toggle button, Heather 7:55 p.m. training. Okay, I really am off. Toggle click button start comment, Daniel Berry officially Rams 2022 champs 8:10 missive. Toggle click buttons out of list, post a comment, out of edit button, hide current comp.
Why do you come to my lair, mortals? The mighty dragon bellowed. I bravely told him that we were there to slay him. Radio, I asked him to leave the kingdom alone. Radio, we attacked him immediately, hoping to have the advantage of surprise. Radio button. Check. I asked him to teach me his magic. Radio, I told him we were there to learn his story. Radio, I had my party distract him while I stole some of his treasure. Needs 75 thievery. Dim. I begged for mercy. Next button. Stewart charged forward as I prepared a mighty spell. I don't think we surprised Parnix's at all. His thick, leathery lips even seemed to turn up into a smile. Fighting plus 10, Warcraft plus 10. Then he flapped his mighty wings and dove directly toward us. He crashed right into Stewart, who managed to hold him at bay with his shield and his sword of death. Mary circled around Parnix's and began to stab into his scaly back with her dagger of sharpness. Parnix's unleashed a great gout of flame, engulfing me before I could move. Sherry was right there, restoring my body with her divine magic. I scrambled, then he flapped his mighty wings and dove direct. We stood in the flame, having recently drunk potions of fireproofing. Needs 75 alchemy, dimmed. I countered the flame with an ice shield. Needs 75 conjuration, dimmed. I had foreseen this. Needs 75 divination, radio button, checked, 3 of 10. I commanded Parnix's to stop. Needs 75 enchantment, radio button, I healed the damage. Needs 75 healing, radio button, I tricked the dragon with an illusion. Needs 75 illusion, dimmed. I raised the dragon's other victims. Needs 75 necromancy, radio button, unchecked, 7 of 10. I summoned a mighty giant to defend us. Needs 75 summoning, dimmed. I turned the fire into water. Needs 75 transmutation. Dimmed. The flames enveloped us all. Radio button. Next. But the fire rolled forward. But we weren't hit. We were all lying flat on our stomachs. I had coached the party before the fight, telling them that this was what we must do. Divination plus 10. Stuart rushed forward once more, slashing across the dragon's face with his sword of death. The mighty beast howled in rage. He had never fought opponents as skilled as we were. His scaly tail came around in a blur, striking Ares across the stomach and into the rocky wall, knocking her unconscious. Parnaxis surged forward, taking Cherry into his powerful jaws and throwing her into Stuart, knocking them both out of the fight. It was just Parnaxis and I. My party had gotten me to this point, but it was up to me to slay the dragon. I saw a claw the size of a wagon descending directly toward me, and I had no time to cast a spell. I dove out of the way. Needs 40 body, radio button. I dodged the blow. Needs 90 fighting, radio button. Shadow, my dog, provided the distraction needed. Radio, I was crushed by his next button. As the enormous claw descended, I dove out of the way. I remember lying on the ground with a mighty dragon Parnaxis standing over me. Only I was left. Stuart, Sherry, and Mary's lay scattered about the cavern. I closed my eyes and spoke quickly, calling for the bolt of pure arcane energy. The dragon advanced, thinking he had won the fight, but when I opened my eyes, he paused, perhaps feeling fear for the first time. My magical energy blasted forth from both of my hands, striking the dragon in the chest and tearing through his scaly armor. I clambered to my feet just in the nick of time as the dragon crashed to the ground where I had been lying. I had slain the mighty dragon Parnaxis.
Gotcha.
I walked slowly around the enormous corpse and returned to my party members. I revived Cherry first, who then used her divine magic to restore everyone else. It was an exhilarating time as we returned to the dead dragon and looked at what I had done. The magical blast had burned the heart out of the beast. The dragon's lair was filled with treasure of all kinds. We weren't disappointed. Gold, jewelry, and magical items were heaped into piles. It took us weeks to bring it all back to Tornassa, but the best piece of treasure was the softly glowing orb called a dragon wish. This powerful piece of dragon magic could only be used once, which sent my mind reeling with the possibilities. Naturally, we retired from adventuring, as there was no need to put ourselves in harm's way anymore, and we were easily the most famous people in Daria. Gold plus 10,000, fame plus 10, gain dragon wish. I looked forward to moving my wife out of the full coven and into a real house, and it would be good for Liam as well. My fellow party members moved out almost right away, eager to begin a normal life. They took all of the extra unused equipment with them. Before I could find a new place to live, however, something historic happened. Next chapter, but it all began with a summons from the court wizard, Fralden, to come to the castle immediately. I went right away and was allowed access past all the guards. The castle was a great representation of the kingdom. Everything was in disrepair and looked untidy. The inner soldiers were standing outside the throne room doors, and they looked nervous. I approached with some apprehension, but they must have been told I was coming because they stepped aside to let me pass. I entered the throne room and saw King Gareth sitting on his throne, reloading a crossbow. His hair was more silver than gray, but he was still in excellent physical shape. Prince Eric, his son, stood aside him with a panicked expression on his face. Prince Eric had grown into a handsome man at the age of 20, and he looked like his father. They were both staring across the room, where Prince Travis stood with the royal wizard Fralden standing in front of him. Prince Travis was 29 years old and looked like his grandfather, the late King Norbert. At his feet, I saw an unmoving bundle of rich clothing with a spreading pool of bright red blood beneath it. It was Princess Emily, dead by the Mad King's own hand. This is madness, Fralden boomed, his gnarled oak staff gripped tightly in his hand. King Gareth was giggling as he continued to turn the windlass on his crossbow. Drool ran from the corner of his mouth, and his dark eyes looked slightly out of focus. He must die, he'll have babies, King Gareth said in a high-pitched voice. Like a litter of rats, they'll come against me and try to take my throne. No, Uncle, Prince Travis said, his voice choked with emotion. Gareth, you've killed Emily, Fralden said in a low voice, trying to make the Mad King see what he had done. Travis is your nephew. He loves you and supports you. Prince Eric is the rightful heir. There is no threat. Kill him, King Gareth demanded of me. It was an enormous decision and I had no time to think about it. I did as my king requested, blasting Prince Travis with fire, radio. The madness had gone too far, so I cast my magic against Gareth, the Mad King, radio button. Check, next, button. The flames poured forth from my hands, enveloping both King Gareth and Prince Eric. From within the fire, I saw King Gareth laughing like a lunatic as he squeezed the trigger on his crossbow. My eyes were then drawn to Freelton, who fell to the hard floor with the bolt stuck in his chest, the final victim of the Mad King. The guards rushed into the room as the last of the flames died down. After studying the 3 dead bodies, they looked to Prince Travis for an explanation of what they were seeing. In the days to follow, Prince Travis and myself concocted a story to protect our actions. We claimed that an assassin had entered the castle, radio button. We said that the court wizard, Freelton, had miscast the spell. It tarnished his reputation greatly. Radio button, unchecked, 2 of 2. Check, next. It was unkind of us to besmirch the good wizard's name, but it had the desired effect. Evil plus 10. Nobody questioned the death of the king, Princess Emily, Prince Eric, and Wizard Freelton. We were able to bury the bodies before anyone had a chance to investigate our story and uncover the truth. Queen Audrey, King Gareth and Princess Emily's mother, was never the same after the death of her children and became unfit to rule. I suspected that her living with the Mad King had probably caused more damage than his death, but either way, she abdicated the throne. Prince Travis, as the next in line, was crowned king a few days after King Gareth's funeral. After having spent a few weeks in the castle helping King Travis through his troubles, I was eager to leave. My party never happened, however, because King Travis declared me to be the new royal wizard. I was taken completely by surprise. Even my divination magic hadn't foreseen this turn of events. It was a historic moment, a troll becoming the royal wizard to the king of Daria. I decided that I would strive to bring forth a new golden age for Daria. Radio button, checked, 1 of 2.
Oh boy.
List with 12 items. Click toggle button. Daniel Berry officially Rams 2022 champs 8:10 p.m. Missip.
I decided that I would dominate all the lands, using Daria as my tool. Radio button, unchecked, 2 of 2.
Well, I'm going to leave that off here for now, guys, and I will put this on the cliffhanger. So, yeah, stay tuned for the next part.
Out of list banner. Edit. Clickable mob. Clickable and make click 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 click. JC. StreamYard. Live viewer screen. Live 3 hours 31 minutes and 52 seconds. Banner. Edit. Clickable and broadcast. Heading level 4. And broadcast button. Button and broadcast.